Hey everyone, welcome to my first compilation video. If you are new to my channel, I teach melt and pour soap techniques from beginner to advanced. This compilation is a collection of my beginner techniques, very beginner, including just how to even choose a melt and pour soap base and what melt and pour soap is. So if you are a beginner, I hope you enjoy these videos. Please know that when I was making these videos, I was not a beginning soaper, but I was a beginning YouTuber. So there's lots of ums and all kinds of fun stuff for you to wade through, uh, like that. But enjoy it anyway. And if I've left something out of any of these, please comment and ask your questions in the comment section of this video. If you would like to see more, let me know, because I do plan to create a second beginning compilation video before I get started into some more advanced compilations. I will not come in and make an intro for each video. There will be a visual cue there for what's coming up, so you will know. There will also be chapters, so you can skip around if you like, although it helps me if you just watch it straight through. I really appreciate you clicking on this, even if you're just leaving it on while you're doing your housework or taking a nap. It really helps the channel a lot, and I hope you can learn something from it and enjoy. Have fun. Hey everyone. Today I'm going to talk you through and walk you through a simple melt and pour soap tutorial. This should walk you from beginning to end, and if you have any questions, if I leave something out, please ask questions in the comments. I'm just quickly sanitizing my surfaces and equipment here. They were pre-washed, so they were already clean. And then I'm spraying with 70% rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, and you leave that for about 30 seconds. I sped a little bit through that through editing, but I did wait 30 seconds and then wiped clean with a lint-free towel or paper towel, whatever you tend to use. I use two types of alcohol. The one with the white cap is the 70%. The one in the blue bottle is 91 or 99, depending on what I have. And I use that for other purposes, which really don't matter for this tutorial. But you see me here starting to chop the soap. I'm going to chop them into about 1-inch little blocks, little tiny squares, cubes. And I'm using premium crystal clear from Crafter's Choice, or Crafter's Choice is the brand I find mine at Wholesale Supplies Plus. And I'm cutting up 1 pound of it on a sanitized cutter and cutting board that are only used for soap. I'm going to be placing that in my heat-safe pitcher and using my heat-safe stirring tool. I tend to melt my soap in a microwave, but you can also use a double boiler setup. Just a simmering pan with a bowl over the top, simmering pan of water, just an inch or two, and make sure your bowl doesn't touch the simmering water, and at a low temperature, just barely simmering. I'm using soap safe colorant. I prefer mica. You can also use soap safe liquid dyes or color blocks. Soap safe fragrance. The amounts are listed. That's at 1%. Following the IFRA guidelines. I go more into that in my fragrance tutorial in my beginner series. Please watch that if you have any questions as I go into much more detail. You see some optional things here. Titanium dioxide dispersed into glycerin isn't necessary, but I wanted to show you something with that and give you some options for colorants. Some of the other items I mentioned are also optional for this soap. You will need a thermometer if you're doing more complicated soaps, and you will also need to be very aware of your soap's melting point and make sure that your soap doesn't boil, burn, get very steamy hot. You've got to err on the side of caution when it comes to how long you put it in the microwave. I'll be putting mine in and the standard is to put it in for 30-second bursts, stirring in between. I also prefer to start tapering that amount down as I get closer to my melting point where I want it. I do take it a little above the melting point when I'm first melting the soap, because don't forget you have to add your, well, you don't have to, but I like to add my fragrances and my colorants, and you want to do that when it's melted, and that can cause quick cooling to happen, especially if you disperse your micas in alcohol. So just take it a little bit above, maybe, I don't know, 3 to 5 degrees above the melting point is about what I tend to do if I'm not doing something where the soap is calling for a higher temperature, which happens occasionally, but you still have to be sure not to boil it. I don't know what mess that is I'm wiping up, but I am a messy soaper. I'll just tell you that up front. So I'm off to microwave this at 30-second increments. I think it only took me 2 30-second increments and maybe 1 or 2 of 15 seconds there. I'm getting ready. It's mostly clear. The soap, which it will get cloudy if you overheat it, by the way, among other things. The fragrance I'm adding is Blue Raspberry from New Directions. This soap, this fragrance, I've used a gazillion times. It's not going to discolor more than what you see here. As I stir it in, it discolors a very tiny amount. And really, normally I would kind of leave it alone, but I'm going to show you a little trick to counteract that. You see how it's just a twinge of yellow in there. And it won't discolor further than that. There's no vanillin in this or anything else that will tend to discolor your soap. But I always do a test, which I will show you what I'm doing later in this video for a test bar. But since it's a little yellow and I'm stirring, and I stirred the fragrance in extremely well, which is also important for your skin safety, but it also can clear up anything that tends to be cloudy from your fragrance, if it's your fragrance oil that's clouding it. If it's yellowed like this, you can counteract that just a little bit by adding a very small amount of soap-safe liquid dye. Please don't use food coloring. I'm probably not even using a quarter of a drop. It is such a small amount there. I'm barely touching that to a stir stick, and I honestly could have gotten away with adding half that amount and it still would have cleared it up. I think I went a little overboard, because I think it went just a little blue to me, but it doesn't hurt anything. Once it gets in the bar form, it pretty much looks clear. And stirring that in well. I'm about to split my batch because I'm doing a couple of different things with soap colorants, and I wanted to divide it that way to make it a little easier on me to keep track of that. So you'll see me pouring off. I'm measuring it with a scale. I'm measuring my temperature first. Look at that, 126 to 127. Always stir before you take that measurement, because the top can cool off quite quickly and the underneath can be really hot. That becomes more important when you're doing more complicated techniques like pouring into a soap with embeds, or pouring over embeds, or embedding soap into soap. And many other things. It can be super important to know the exact temperature. So I'm just pouring out 8 ounces into this smaller little pitcher. I prefer these pour pitchers. They are heat and microwave safe, and they allow me, that longer spout allows me to get down lower to the soap and gives me more control with the amount of soap that I'm pouring. I find that very important. You might not. You might want to use a Pyrex. Those work fabulously. And they do keep the heat in a little bit longer. Just something to keep in mind. I'm using just a plain old silicone mold I found on Amazon. It's a 6 cavity. I'm only using 4 of those today. And I'm pouring out my first soap, which is just clear. This is my fragrance tester. It will show you, if you do one of these tests, how is the fragrance holding up? Is it in a week? Is it discoloring brown or green or yellow? Is it doing that in 3 weeks? You want to know, because you don't want to sell a soap or give a soap to somebody and have it turn an icky color and ruin your design. A lot of times it just doesn't matter, but for those kinds of soaps where it matters, you just want to know ahead of time. That's why I do a test. So I'm putting a tiny, tiny bit, not even an eighth, maybe an eighth of a teaspoon, but I don't even think it's that much, into that's just 4 ounces left from the first soap I poured. And already, of course, I fragranced it earlier. I like to do that all at once, so then when I divide it and use it, I don't have to worry about fragrancing it again. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I'm fragrancing at 1%. I like to err on the side of caution with that as well, and not risk harming someone's skin. Your soap isn't really meant to fragrance your skin, just to enjoy it while you're using the soap. That tiny bit of mica, as you will see, stirred in and is extremely transparent. You can get a transparent look from using micas. You just have to use a very small amount and a very brilliant color. If you did a really pale blue, you would not be seeing any blue in this at all. So I used a very intense Key West mica from Mad Micas. But you see the shimmer. You see when I spritzed with alcohol to get rid of the bubbles, which I always do when pouring a soap like this. You always want to spritz after you pour to get rid of the bubbles. I usually do it a couple of times. Sometimes I come back a second or two later because another bubble or so has risen up. But you see that mica, you see the shimmer kind of catching the light there. It's a beautiful effect. And you don't really see the shimmer once I unmold it, but you will see how transparent the soap stays. I'm getting ready to add more mica because the next 2 soaps I pour, I want to demonstrate how different ways you can get an opaque look with your soap, even if you're not buying an opaque soap like a goat's milk. If you're using clear, you can get a fairly opaque and or darker color by adding a larger amount of an intense colored mica. And I'm just stirring in a half teaspoon into 1 teaspoon of rubbing alcohol. Helps it to disperse more evenly and quickly. It will disperse if you put it in dry. It just takes longer, takes more stirring. And if your soap is on the verge of cooling, you might have to heat it up again, which is what I do in a moment. But first, I'm just going to pour that in there and get an idea of how opaque it is. I like to, when I'm doing a soap that's a really brilliant color, especially if I'm making something to go in another soap, a certain look I want, I might want it to be completely opaque. You can also add a drop or 2 of titanium dioxide, which you'll see me do a little bit later, but it will lighten the color. If you're just using a drop or 2, it's not going to affect it that much, but we'll give it a little bit more opacity. There's where I added the dry mica in. It just wasn't as opaque as I wanted it to be, but it's lumpy. It's a little harder to stir in, and would have stirred in if I just kept stirring, but it also would have cooled it off a little too much. So I run to the microwave and heat it for literally just 10 seconds. That's it. 10 seconds and it's already perfectly fluid, and the mica is pretty well stirred in as well, and gives me a little bit more wiggle room of time to stir it in, make sure it's stirred in, and then add something else to it and pour another soap. So you see that 10 seconds goes a really long way when it comes to just topping off that heat a little bit, taking it back to a more fluid state. You don't need to put it in for 30 seconds. You'll be burning it if you do that. So just pouring in this the opaque blue. Look how shimmery and how opaque it is. Shimmery and pearlescent and almost has a metallic finish to it. I love that look. It's beautiful. You might end up with a little bit of blue suds, or if you have any other intense color, you might end up coloring the suds slightly. It's not going to do very much to it. And it certainly isn't going to stain your skin. If you're using a soap that has a little bit of color in the suds, it won't hurt anything. So there's the titanium dioxide dispersed in, it's a powder, comes as a powder, and it disperses in glycerin. Some types disperse in oil, some in water. This type I purchased, I believe, disperses in either one or it's water dispersible. I'm not sure, but it works very well in glycerin. That you can add glycerin in small amounts to glycerin soap. You have to be careful, because if you add too much, you'll get a lot of glycerin dew. You'll also get glycerin dew if you overheat it or just leave it out if you don't wrap it quickly enough, or put it in a place where the air is circulating really well before you wrap it airtight. I live in a very humid state, and I combat this a lot. It is compatible. You can spritz it with alcohol, you can wipe it away, you can rinse it away. There's a variety of things you can do. I won't go into that too much because I don't have time in this video. But what I did there at the tail end is I poured the rest with the titanium dioxide into the more opaque blue soap. I just wanted to show you how quickly titanium dioxide, or soaps with titanium dioxide, goat milk, shea butter, etc., will sink. It is going to be heavier. Titanium dioxide is heavy, and it will sink to the bottom. In very rare cases, you can get it to float a little bit more if you get the temperatures right. The lower the temperature, the more control you have over that. This is the clear one. Look how clear that shows up. You might be able to see a twinge of blue, but really not enough to matter. It looks clear. And it's not going to change colors from this because of the fragrance oil I chose. Wow. So here's the titanium dioxide part. There's where it sank to the bottom and then spread out along the bottom. If the soap had been hotter, it probably would have spread all the way across the bottom. That's just what it tends to do. Sometimes you'll get those little rivery kind of, it's not really glycerin rivers, but it looks like it, little kind of, I don't know, spider-like look to it, but not always. So you can't count on that as a design element. I just wanted to show you how it sinks, because when you learn eventually, and I'm hoping you come back to learn how to swirl and layer, etc., and do different various techniques and designs, that's just something important to know. And I had a moment there to share that with you and show you a quick little demo with it. Titanium dioxide will also make your soap take longer to set up. So keep in mind, soap will set up at different times depending on the type of soap, the brand of soap, what your melting point is, how hot you had it, how hot your house is, how humid your house is, or studio, wherever you're working. And so you have to just touch it, touch the top, touch the bottom, whatever you need to do. Don't push hard with your fingers. You're going to put a great big old fingerprint in it if it's not ready to come out. Or you might even have it kind of come apart on you and squish out like one of those, I don't know, squishers, whatever they called those candy with the gel stuff in the middle. Got to be careful. So make sure it's set up half hour to an hour for soap like this, maybe even an hour and a half, depending on your circumstances. The hotter the melting point, the quicker it sets up. The little blue one that's super clear, I love the way that one came out. Again, just a tiny amount of a very brilliant colored mica, and it is so see-through. It looks almost as if you had done it with liquid soap dye. I'm not against using liquid soap dye, but if you combine that with other colorants, you are likely to have bleeding, and the color will disperse throughout the soap and not play nice with the other colors. I'm hoping that I got in all of the information I planned. If I left something out, again, please put that in the comments. Here are some soaps that are I'm going to be working on in my beginner series. Layering, what you can add to soaps was the first one. Making confetti soaps, those are so easy and make a great design. Some simple crystals, these are a lot simpler than they look. And then some more complicated crystal soaps too. These are using a variety of techniques. Swirl, this is just a 2-color acorn swirl, and this is a 3-color swirl. It's not really an acorn swirl, it's kind of my own technique that I'll be sharing with you. This one has a little bit of swirling plus embeds, and here we have a more simpler embed soap and a more complicated embed soap. And there's a lot of other techniques I'm not sharing with you today, but I hope you come back and follow my beginner melt and pour series to learn more. Thanks for stopping by. The biggest melt and pour mistakes and how to avoid them. Buying too much of one kind of soap. Spending too much money on molds. Buying every mold you can find on Amazon because, well, they are really cute. Learning how to make soap by watching life hack videos or getting all of your ideas from Pinterest. Adding flowers, fruit, vegetables to your soap. Melt and pour soap is not cold process soap, and understanding the difference is very important. Not buying a thermometer and not understanding the melting point of your soap. Not understanding IFRA and fragrance regulations and buying large amounts of both fragrance and micas. Also throwing away soap fails. In my beginner melt and pour soap series, you'll learn why you want to buy soap samples and how to test them. You'll learn that you may not even need to buy expensive silicone molds to start with. You'll also learn why you need to follow a variety of experienced melt and pour soap makers and where to find them. You'll also learn about different types of fragrances and different types of colorants. How do you know how much to use? How do you know if they are both soap safe and skin safe? What are IFRA guidelines for fragrance and how do you use them? How do you get clear soap to stay clear? What makes it look cloudy? What makes it turn yellow after 2 days? We'll even discuss that most controversial subject of what can I add to my melt and pour soap base without ruining it. This is the question for the ages. You'll find as many varying answers as you will questions, which can be very confusing for a new soaper. We'll look at some great guidelines for this question and even do our own experiments so that you can hopefully come away with the conclusion that is best for you. We'll learn how to paint embeds with micas and learn to embed them in soap so that they won't melt. We'll also learn to control the temperature of your soap so you can layer, so you can learn to swirl. We'll start with some very basic swirling. These are a little bit more advanced than we'll start with, but we'll practice so you can learn to get to soaps that look like this. This is a faux swirl. I won't be doing this in this class, but in my upcoming classes I will. These are some examples, these last few, of some more complicated soaps, both embed, using painting, mica painting of course, and using swirls and layering and a variety of other techniques. I look forward to working with you, and I hope I can answer some of your questions and help you to become a better soaper. Thanks! Welcome to my Beginner Melt and Pour series. Today I'm going to help you choose a melt and pour base that best suits your needs. Let's dive in and learn about glycerin soap. Follow the chapters if you want to skip right to my recommendations. The images you see today are just something to watch while I talk too much. Me cutting and melting soap, and later a lather test. Glycerin soap is created with a hot process using oils, water, and lye. Like all true soap, there is no residual lye in your melt and pour soap base, nor any other properly made soap, but it is made using lye. You can learn to make your own glycerin soap, but not from me. I will recommend a few tutorials for creating glycerin soap from scratch in the description. Cold and hot process soap makers choose oils, butters, and other ingredients to create many types of soap with various properties. If you're buying a pre-made melt and pour base, how do you customize it like that? Well, mostly you don't. First and most important is to start with a base that is closest to what you want in a soap. Randomly using additives to improve a soap, which likely will not work, may very well destroy the integrity of your soap, as in completely break down the chemical composition so you don't even have soap anymore. The more things you add, the riskier that becomes. Later in my Beginner Melt and Pour series, we will be conducting some experiments to play with this idea, and you may be surprised by some of the results. I have so many experiments planned, including one you'll see me begin in this video. Look, I refuse to become the soap police, but I do hope to inform you of risks and encourage you to do your own research. Obviously, depending upon the restrictions where you live, you make your own choices. My suggestion: avoid buying a soap base and thinking, I'll just add a little shea butter to make it more moisturizing. Just buy a shea butter base if that's what you're looking for. So where do you start? First, ask yourself this question: what is the most important thing for you in creating a soap? Skin feel? The design? Lather? Bar hardness? Skin sensitivities? Maybe eco-friendly or vegan is most important for you. You might be thinking, wow, this sounds like a lot of research for a basic soap for my kid's teacher. And you'd be right. But I've seen so many people in the soap world, myself included, who've wasted a lot of money and time by not understanding what they are buying. Here are some suggestions and thoughts to consider as you make this choice. For the skin feel, you may want to look for soap bases containing milks, butters, moisturizing oils, and other luxurious ingredients, such as tussa silk or aloe vera. But please know this: what feels good to one person can feel awful to the next. Soap is highly personal, and skin feel is very subjective. This is why I encourage you to test various types and brands. Okay, so how do you test? Plain soap. No fragrance, no oils, no colorants, nothing. Just a small chunk. When people are new to using glycerin soap, they can confuse the feeling of not having their skin stripped of oils from the commercial soaps that they are used to and mistake it for dryness or tightness or a film after rinsing. This is why I always suggest to customers or newbies that they assess 3 times before totally judging a soap. The first, lather and rinse, then assess it again about 3 to 5 minutes after you dry your hands. You want them really thoroughly dry. And then about 2 to 3 days after using that soap exclusively. Unless you have some kind of obvious reaction, I recommend using only one kind of soap for a few days and then make your final assessment. Take notes because you'll thank me later for that. Is your design the main focus? If so, choose a soap base with more open or work time, usually meaning a lower melting point, and higher clarity if you intend to create clear soaps. An example of a low melting point is about 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Remember that the color of the soap base will affect your design. A white base will give you pastel to bright-ish colors at best. Never dark, intense colors, never black. I will always recommend Crafter's Choice Premium Crystal Clear Soap for the best options in design. And I'm not paid to say so. It is my go-to, and I haven't found another soap that matches its clarity in combination with open working time. I haven't tried every brand under the sun, so please do your own research. Also, I'm in the U.S., and this base isn't available or approved for worldwide use. Is the lather the most important thing for you? If so, look for premium, prime type soaps. They usually have mild detergents added and create a big bubbly lather. Several of the manufacturers list a bubble or lather description on their websites. Many types of detergent-free soaps also have amazing lather, especially if you are not incorporating too many additives. Detergent-free goat's milk is one that I find lathers extremely well. Many others give you a lovely creamy lather. If the thought of detergents added bothers you, but you still want to try a soap base with extra bubbles, try looking for one using sodium lauryl sulfate, or SLES, rather than sodium lauryl sulfate, SLS. They are not the same thing, but they are frequently confused with each other. SLES, or sodium lauryl sulfate, is not as harsh on the skin. Later, I'll be doing an entire video on lather, but as a beginner, your best bet is to be careful what you add, not overheat your soap base, and pay attention to manufacturers' descriptions and customer reviews on the lather. Maybe bar hardness is important to you, a bar that lasts longer and stays harder for longer. Low sweat soaps and like cold process soap bases tend to make harder bars. But again, you'll have to play around with different brands too. Of the many brands I've tried, I find SCIF, and no, I don't know what that stands for, but I'll look it up and put it in my description. Stevenson's and Makesy, which used to be Wooden Wick, their soap bases tend to create harder bars. I'll put links for all of the soaps and manufacturers I mention, US-based links, in my description. Is earth-friendly most important for you? Look for the detergent-free soaps. There are some that say natural, even though that's not, that word natural isn't regulated in the US. Always check out the ingredient lists. Makesy makes a very clean ingredient list on in their soap bases. It's not as easy to design with in my experience, though, and they are not cheap. Really nice soaps, though, especially if you are looking to create a luxury gift or a specialty line of soaps. Several brands have bases with very clean lists, and if ingredients matter to you, learn what each ingredient does, and please don't automatically be afraid of chemical names. A reminder that water is a chemical compound. There are fearmongers out there, so when you research controversial ingredients, try to find a few sources that are pro and a few sources that are con, or an objective source, so you can make your choices with an open mind. Is your preference vegan? If so, you must read the ingredients. Obviously, soaps with most milks won't be vegan, except coconut milk, and that is a really nice base. A few soap bases include honey in the ingredients, but it's not part of the name of the soap. The same goes for silk and silk proteins. There are many vegan options out there. One of my favorites is Crafter's Choice Aloe Vera and Olive, and another is Stevenson's Crystal Carrot, Cucumber, and Aloe. My suggestion is to buy 2 or 3 samples of soap bases from at least a few reputable soap supply companies. If you want to run to the nearest craft store and grab the soap base that's on sale, well, I totally get that. Just please do your research first. Look at the ingredients, the melting point, and the lather descriptions, and don't buy a ton of one kind, no matter how good the sale is. I'll link a few of my favorite suppliers in the description. In the US, soap bases cost anywhere from around $5 to $12 for 2-pound blocks. If you order online, pay close attention to shipping, as soap weighs a lot. And research the company a little. Do they make mostly soap supplies and related products, or do they make a lot of other random things? That's a red flag in my opinion. Soap bases are all so different, and I cannot say one type is better than another, because that depends on what you want the soap to do or not do, and how your skin reacts to the soap. That is highly personal. Just please don't buy a soap expecting to change it. We'll talk a lot more about that in a later video, the very controversial subject of what can I add to my melt and pour soap. If you have any questions or you have a soap base to recommend, please put it in the comments and tell us what you like about that specific base and what types of soap you use it to make. Okay, I'm going to take us to the screen here where I'm showing you a soap that I made during the demo, and it's a detergent-free soap. It's a really nice soap. I just wanted to show you how long it took to set up. That's why it's wrinkled. When I tried to move it, it wasn't set up yet. So I just wanted to demo a few things like that. The soap you're seeing on the screen now is one I made quite a while back. It's a geode crystal slab soap, and I actually made it in 2 stages. I had some geode soaps I'd made that I didn't really do anything with, and they were a little small to be an individual soap. So I embedded those into some Crafter's Choice Premium Crystal Clear, which is my go-to for designer soaps, and I think you'll see why when you see the clarity of it. And this gives you a nice idea of the bubble of that soap. It lathers quite well. The skin feel after the rinse of this soap to me is clean without being stripped. I don't feel like there's a film afterward, but my skin is always nice and soft. Again, everybody's skin is different, and you'll feel things differently with different types of soap. But look at that lather. That's pretty good. After I rinse here, I'm going to next demo a soap I made that is detergent-free. It's made from the same brand, the Crafter's Choice, but it's the detergent-free clear soap. I absolutely love this soap. I love the way the design turned out. It was one of my best swirls that I've ever done, and I love the way it feels. Those little black portions that you see are salt, black lava salt, and I love salt bars. They are amazing on the skin, and they do, or I should say, they can help the lather quite a bit. There are times that salt can also deter the lather, and we'll talk more about that in the lather video that I'm going to do. But look at the bubbles from that detergent-free soap. And I'm going to also mention here, while I'm finishing this up, I washed my hands 12 times in a row, no lotion, no oils, and my skin felt fabulous afterward. And the next morning, it still felt great. It felt like my skin or hands had a spa treatment. I'm not even kidding and not exaggerating. They felt so good, I kept commenting on it all night. You can ask my boyfriend. He was tired of hearing about it. That being said, you have to try them. You can't just assume a detergent-free soap is going to lather like that, because not all of them do. Some have a more creamy lather, as you'll see in the upcoming videos where I do more lather testing. If you learned anything, or if I've sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to see the rest of my beginner series, or take a look at my more advanced projects for inspiration and technique ideas. I really hope you enjoyed this and got something from it. Leave a comment in the comments below and let me know what you found most interesting. And I hope to see you again soon, and hope to help you learn to become a better soaper. Thanks. Bye. How do you safely melt and pour soap without ruining it? Well, first, make sure you are actually using a melt and pour soap base, not just some random soap. If you haven't seen my discussion on soap bases, check the link at the end of the video and in the description. While I ramble on about melting soap, you get to watch me make a scrap soap using a soap fail from last year's Easter eggs. I really goofed the temperature, and the layers didn't adhere very well. After making sure you're using a melt and pour soap base, and making sure that you know the melting point of that base, you want to determine which method is best for you. There's the double boiler method, the crock pot method, the microwave method, or a wax or soap melter. We'll talk more about each of these. All of these methods need strict monitoring of the temperature, with exception of a temperature-controlled wax or soap melter. Please remember, if you allow the soap to boil or simmer, it is burned. When soap burns, it smells gross and will likely set up very rubbery and no longer lather, really not even soap anymore. I accidentally boiled some and poured it into a mold anyway because I just wanted to see if it was totally ruined. It felt horrible on my skin. It was like rubbing my skin with a piece of plastic. Even just overheating the soap can make it cloudy or off color, rubbery texture, and destroy the lather. And it can cause it to sweat or bead up with glycerin dew. We'll chat more about glycerin dew in another video coming up. But for now, just trust me, don't overheat your soap. So the double boiler method is the first one we'll talk about. It's the only way to melt and pour soap on the stove. Basically, a double boiler is a heat-safe bowl. Tempered glass like Pyrex or stainless steel both work fine. And it's over a pan with a couple inches of simmering water. The water should not be full-on boiling, and the upper bowl shouldn't be touching the water. Use a wider bowl on the top or lift the bowl above the water with a heat-safe lift or insert. The temperature should remain only slightly above the melting point of your soap base, and you should monitor both the water level in the bottom pan and the temperature of the soap in the top bowl. I wouldn't leave it melted there for long periods over the heat, as it can lose too much water through evaporation, and that will make it susceptible to overheating. I'm going to leave a couple of pics at the end of the video for reference so you can see what a double boiler looks like. You can also purchase a pre-made double boiler or bain-marie, but the DIY version that you'll see at the end can work just as well. Second version is the crockpot method. I haven't used that one for soap, but I know soapers who swear by it. I feel like it's best for soaps with a higher melting point, or if you're going to use it fairly quickly once you get it melted. The downside here is that most crockpots on their lowest setting, like the warm setting, cycle to 165 degrees Fahrenheit. For the soap base I use, that's just too hot. The more control you have over the temperature and time settings, the better. Make sure you know your soap's melting point. I'm going to say that a lot in this video. Know the temperature and heating cycles of your crock pot. Make sure you use a separate crock pot for food. You might be able to find a fondue pot with a lower temperature range if temperature is a concern. Make sure you monitor the temperature with a thermometer. And as you're getting ready to pull the soap out of the crock pot, use something like a ladle to get the soap into your pouring vessel. The microwave method is next. This is the method I prefer for smaller to medium-sized batches, which is what I usually make. Using a high heat microwave safe container, melt at small increments, 30 seconds at a time for a full pitcher, stirring or at least agitating in between each heat burst. You can sometimes get away with 45 to 60 seconds for the very first round, depending again on your soap's melting point, but I would keep it at 30 seconds after that. I actually prefer to lower the time of the heat blasts as my soap gets closer to melting. I'll start lowering the time when all the soap nuggets are submerged in liquid soap. I begin by lowering it to 20 seconds per burst and then 15. Please note, if you are melting smaller amounts, you will have to start with smaller increments. Occasionally, you may only need a tiny bit for something, so start with way less time. A tiny amount of soap can burn or boil in 5 to 10 seconds, so make sure you're watching carefully. Okay, the last method I have for melting melt and pour soap is using a wax or soap melter. For larger batches, a wax or soap melter can be a great solution. I have a large soap melter, but I only use it for my wholesale accounts. Other than melting large amounts, the benefit is a very controlled temperature, fluctuating only by a few degrees, even if it's left in there for hours. Keep in mind, before you purchase something like this. Most of these have a minimum fill amount that they recommend for starting each session. So unless you're going to use large amounts, it's really not worth the money. Definitely worth the extra money to purchase the heated dispenser, or as the soap is poured, the dispenser can clog with cooling soap. I'm going to put a link to the company I bought mine from, but I really do not recommend these for beginners, as this would be a huge waste of money if you aren't already selling large amounts of soap, or teaching, perhaps, using large amounts of soap in some way. But I thought I should include it here just so that you have the info. Please note, you should always use equipment and tools dedicated to making soap. We're talking about melting equipment here, so I just wanted to remind you that you don't want to share kitchen items that you also use to prepare dinner. Speaking of kitchen tools, my favorite tool for stirring are the silicone stirrers, spatulas. I don't even know what you call them all, but they usually come in a set. Scrapers, that's another word for some of the shapes, I guess. Silicone spoon, silicone, however you say it. I find mine on Amazon, and they just are the easiest for me for soap. Can you use metal spoons? Yes, of course you can. Again, with any of the kitchen tools you use, you want to maintain them as soap tools only and not mix them with your stirring your spaghetti sauce. So I'm going to take a minute here to talk a little bit about the soap that you're watching me make. This style of soap has been called everything from confetti soap, scrap soap, to terrazzo soap, which I tend to call it because I grew up and still live in Florida, and Florida has a lot of terrazzo floors. There's little pieces of stone in the floors and kind of in a cement, and then it's a polished finish. If you haven't seen a terrazzo floor, they're really, really pretty. Just don't fall on one. You'll really hurt yourself. But these soaps, called terrazzo soaps, usually are made from scraps, but you don't have to. You can make them intentionally with the colors you want. But I was trying to use up some scraps today while we talked a little bit about melting soap. And I just wanted to take a minute to mention some of the things you may have seen me doing in here. I heated the soap base a little more than I usually do, not to the point of overheating it where it's going to ruin the soap, but I wanted to take it a little higher than usual for this kind of soap. Because I wanted to show you that trick. I just plopped in a little chunk of soap because that can be one of the ways to cool your soap faster. You always want to be aware of the time that you're going to need to add colorants and fragrance, of course, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Those things will definitely also cool your soap, so you have to heat it to hotter than what you want to pour unless you're not fragrancing or coloring. At least by a little bit. You can always pop it back in the microwave for a few seconds, like 5-10 seconds, if you need to heat it back up a little bit after adding those things. But I took it a little hotter because I wanted to show you melting that soap helps. It also helps when you're right here. What I'm doing, I'm even adding more colorant because it does also help cool the soap. I usually add the colorant first. We'll talk about this a little more in my colorant video, which is a little ways down the road. I'll add the colorant first because it's going to cool it down a little bit more for the fragrance. Especially if I'm using a delicate fragrance, I'm careful with that. Even though the flash point may be usually 180 is typical, and I never take my soap anywhere near that high, I still like to give it a little bit of I don't know, extra kid gloves when I'm using my fragrance. So I cool it a little bit first by adding the colorant. especially if you've got it mixed in with alcohol, which I normally do. You've seen me several times add mica without the alcohol, and you'll see that again here in just a minute. I was really not happy with the titanium dioxide that I just added. I was trying to make it a little more opaque, but I didn't like the color it turned. I know it doesn't look like a bad color on the screen, but I don't know, it just looked funny and I didn't like it. So I was mad at myself, and I added a little bit more mica at the last minute. I knew there was plenty of working time with the temperature I'd taken it to. Under normal circumstances, I probably would have left that little block in, the little crystal piece of soap in a little bit longer, and maybe even just left it in there. But I took it out because I didn't want it to get too cold. I like to pour soaps like this with a lot of confetti or a lot of chunks. Shredded soap, whatever you're adding, if there's a lot of what you're adding, it's going to cool the soap very fast. So just to be aware of that. If you only add a few, if you sprinkle in a few of those in a soap that's as hot as this is, which I think I pour around 130. Yeah, 130. If you put embeds in at that temperature with my soap, which has a melting temperature of 120 to 125, which is on the low end, it's the way I like it, it'll melt it. It'll melt it right away. But this is a soap where I'm adding a lot. I'm adding a lot of embeds, so I don't want it to seize up too quickly, so I pour it a little hotter. They adhere really well. I do spray them with a little bit of alcohol here. You see me doing and stirring. I did that a little bit earlier too off camera. It helps them to adhere when you spritz them with alcohol, but you do have to be cautious. You don't want to add too much. That can cause them to not adhere. And just the right amount of alcohol. It takes some experimenting, and it takes some getting used to, especially when you're using a different type of soap base than you're used to, or a new base. But a little bit of alcohol helps it adhere. I should have, and I normally, when I'm doing this kind of soap, you see me tapping it in. Normally I tap the sides of the mold as well. I don't know why I didn't here, but I didn't. So you see the little tiny sprinkles I put on top for decoration. That was just kind of an idea I had as I was making it. It wasn't like a planned thing, but I was like, oh, I'll hold a little bit of these crystals back. Well, they're really not crystals. Little chunks back, and make an embellishment for the top. Then, of course, if you know me at all, if you've seen any of my videos, you know I have a thing for glitter. And I put it in a lot of my soaps. Not every single one, but I couldn't resist with this one. It's kind of a confetti parade, I don't know, kind of look. It's like a party. So to me, it needed some glitter. Definitely looks better than the eggs did. Even if they hadn't fallen apart, I wasn't happy with the colors I'd chosen. I wasn't happy with the way the design turned out. So I probably would have cut them up anyway, but then they didn't hold together because I poured it too cold. So here you see the little chunk. I love this little 4x4 mold because it's just fun to experiment with, or just do a little scrap soap like this without wasting a lot of soap. It helps me to use up scraps. It helps me to get little samples. These, as you'll see, I make some mini soaps out of these. Sometimes I'll use them and it makes about, I don't know, 3 or 4 slices. I usually slice a little thicker than 1 inch. I like the soaps to be a little thicker. So a lot of times I'll slice it into 3, and then it will have sometimes a little end left, depending on how I set my Uncle Andy's, because you can change the setting on how thick you want the slices. So what I'm doing now here is just shaving a little bit off the sides, because another thing I forgot with this mold is I sometimes will push a little box on each side against it, or some books or something, and I just didn't with this one. I didn't push a lot of crystals or embeds down into it, so it didn't bulge out a lot, but it bulged out enough that it was bothering me. So I sliced a little off the ends. It keeps them from looking like they're bowed outward, like the mold bowed outward. So I didn't want the soaps to be really wonky. But these make great samples. I'll cut it in half, and then I'll cut it in half the other direction, and then cut those in half again. It gives me 8 little fun little sample sizes that I'll be giving out with my next orders. So if you want one of these, place an order and you'll get one for free. This I don't like. I don't like eyeballing and cutting my soaps, and that's all you've seen me do for these first videos. I don't know why. This just happens to be the designs I chose for the first few videos, with exception of the Galaxy, the mini Galaxy soaps. Those were in little round individual molds. But yeah, I'm ending up cutting by hand, which I'm not great at. I'm okay. I've gotten better. You have to line yourself up over the top of it, which when you have a camera also over the top of the soap you're making because you're filming, it's a little more difficult. I don't want to knock the camera with my head, and I don't want to get my head in the picture. So that's what you end up with, is me just taking my sweet time to cut these. They came out pretty cute, though. I had a hard time. They look pretty decent on camera when I was holding it up, but for some reason when I was filming, it didn't look like it was very good color. And then I took the pictures, and it didn't pick up well on the film for taking the pictures. I think it was a lighting issue. Sometimes my camera fights certain colors. My camera phones, or my phone camera. So the video's not done on that, but I don't know, it fought the colors a little bit too. Way worse in my light box, though. I adapted them as best I could. But these are so easy to make, and if you mess up a soap, don't throw it away. Unless it's burned or boiled, then yeah, throw it away because it's no good. It's just not great on your skin, and it doesn't lather. So, but these, I mean, they look great now. I think they look great now. It isn't a soap I would have planned to do, like, oh, I'm going to make a purple terrazzo soap. But I had those soaps that I pulled out for the soap fail picture at the beginning of my beginner melt and pour soap series. I wanted to show that there are ways to avoid things like that. And I was looking for kind of an ugly soap, and to me it was ugly because it was falling apart. And I finally used it up. I was happy to use it in this, and I think it's much cuter now than it was. So in a minute you'll see the pictures from the light box. They're all right. But I want to kind of wrap up a little bit by saying that if you have any questions, please ask them in the comments or on the community tab. For my experienced soapers that are watching as a refresher course, let me know your favorite way of melting soap. One of the things I find great about making soap, melt and pour soap, is you find so many people doing things in a variety of ways and approaching designs very differently. My next beginner series video, I'll be making an easy shaving soap, while I also show you how I add clays to my soap. If this series has been helpful for you in any way, please like and subscribe to my channel and help it grow. It's brand new. I release a new beginner tutorial every other week, and on opposite week, more advanced designs, experiments, and other fun stuff. As always, my goal is to inspire you and help you to become a better soaper. Thanks. Bye. Hey everyone, let's jump on in. We've got a lot to cover today. We're going to do an easy single mold swirl. We're going to learn a little bit about different types of colorants, and we're actually going to make a stained glass soap that won't bleed, believe it or not. So we're starting off. This soap is for a good friend of mine. Hi, Heather. And I just want to show using liquid dyes and some things to look out for when you're using liquid dyes. We're using the lemon yellow, and the reason I brought that other one up to the camera is I wanted you to make sure you notice there's a difference between lemon yellow and lemon lime, brilliant lemon lime. Oh, there's my first spill. Woohoo! They're quite different in colors in the way the colors work, and I'll show you the lemon lime later. It's really cool, but it's just not for this soap. This one I'm using the Satsuma, if you saw my fragrance oil, which is already a bit on the yellow side. So being an orangey type scent, we're going with orange. Right now you see a little accent of green, which can be yucky when you combine it with orange, but this one tends to work. Notice I'm using the green I'm using is mica, and there's quite a lot of mica in that. It's fairly dense. And now I'm choosing apple red stained glass colorant. There are other types of colorants like this, liquid dyes. As long as they are for soap, they are fine. I'm telling you the colorant names for the liquid stained glass dye from Wholesale Supplies Plus, because that's what I have and that's what I prefer to use for this type of soap and many others. There's so many uses. The blue that I use for bluing is among them. If you haven't seen my short on that, I have a little demo. I used the apple red to go with that lemon yellow because the other reds are a little bit more pink, and they're going to give you a peach tone, which is not what I was going for with this soap. And as we get closer to my recommendations for what to purchase, these liquid dyes, they have samples that are $1.09 a piece. You can't go wrong with that because they last a very long time. So here's my little accent of the maniacal pea from Mad Mica. Yes, the orange will bleed, and it will bleed into the soap surrounding the mica. It won't change the color of the mica, but it will change the color of the soap a little bit. You'll see even now it looks a little, it's got a little orange or rust tint to it. But because the mica is fairly thick in here, and you'll see when I unmold these that it falls to the bottom a little bit. It tends to still show the green. I'm kind of just playing with other with other liquid soap dyes right now. I'll jump in when I have to, but I wanted to get back to that little swirl because I didn't get to say, it goes too fast. I didn't get to say that the reason that swirl works so well, it's not a suspending base. It's not a swirling base. That's just premium crystal clear. Crafter's Choice premium crystal clear, which is what I use for most things. The reason it works is because the temperature was really, really low. The orange was at about 125, 124, something like that. And the green was way lower. It was getting close to that point where it might have jellied up a little bit and been too thick to pour. But then I nuked it for just a couple of seconds. Yes, you can nuke things for just a couple of seconds. I'm going to pause on that thought real quick because this is the lemon lime, the brilliant lemon lime. I don't think the camera shows it enough, but it is like day glow green. It's like the liquid version of tennis ball breaker from Mad Mica's. It's a beautiful, beautiful color. If you mix it with, not mix it, but if you try to swirl it with other colors, or it's going to color the rest of the soap. It's going to bleed into it. So be aware of that. There are times when you might want that look. I use the liquid dyes in my crystal soaps all the time, and I use it very strategically if I don't mind if the colors migrate. It can actually work really well for you. You'll see a demo later where it sort of works, but it wasn't what I wanted, and so that's why we're doing a stained glass version. Most of this demo here that I'm showing you the different colors, I kind of wanted you to see the differences between the reds and the yellows, and as they mix. That red there, that's the apple red. It works really well for oranges and peaches and bright. It's almost an orangey red, bright type mixes you're doing. Not as much when you're trying to make purple. It does work, but it kind of negates a lot of the other color of the blue. It kind of offsets it, as you'll see with the purples I've made. You'll see when they're set up, because I do show you the difference between them. When I'm making a purple, I find the reds with the more pink tone seem to work a lot better, which would be the strawberry red and Santa red. Either one of those. Strawberry is a little more purple than the Santa red. Santa red's kind of like a mix between the two. Anyway, here's the result. I didn't swirl that one just because I ran out of the green, and I said, well, I'll just use that one for myself because it smells like Satsuma, and that's amazing. See how nice that swirled? It comes out beautiful if the temperature is right, and if you don't play with it too much. That's an issue I have sometimes, and to learn to leave it alone at the right time. And if you see you could have the top be either side, but where on the bottom where the mica tends to fall a little bit because it's a little heavier, it accents where the green is. I like that look a little bit better. I'm showing you this because these bottles, well, I do recommend them for use for people who like to use liquid dyes. They're messy. The big bottles are very, very messy. What you just saw there were the samples, and they're $1.09. You really, again, can't go wrong with that. So, yeah, that's just showing you what it would have looked like if I had not chosen the colors I chose for that orange. So that's the strawberry and the apple red next to each other. That is the purple that was made with the more pink one, the strawberry red, and that one right there was the apple red. So it kind of dulled the color, as you see. It's still pretty, kind of looks like a lilac, but it's just not as brilliant. And here is proof that these colors will bleed. That is really pretty. It's a stained glass soap, and I love the way it looks. You see the glitter, you see how clear it is. I love the design. I was really, really proud of that one like 2 years ago when I made it. It's still so see-through and transparent, but this was my original design. I like both of them, but I was going for individual colors, and it just didn't stay. It stayed for a good maybe 8 months, so I was actually surprised by that. I had in my head, even though I knew they bled, I had it in my head that they wouldn't cross the barrier of the black frame. I don't know why. What you're seeing now, this is just a quick demo. It's a little bit of a throwback to my tie-dye soap, which I recently posted. I just want to show you a little bit about pigments because I don't do a lot with that in this video, but it's listed in the title. Because my main takeaway from pigments, first of all, you really want a good brand. And yeah, and my spill. I have to show it again because it was a fun one. Flinging things is apparently what I do. Most neon colorants you're going to get are a pigmented color, and you can get others that are pigmented. They're kind of grainy. Can you see the little grains in there? You really have to stir. And I like using, this is an enormous bath bomb bowl or bath bomb mold, but I like it because the inside is a little rough. And it helps kind of grind them up a little bit. This one is actually the best one I've found. These are the Mad Micas. It's one of the things that brought me to Mad Mica is it's finer than many and easier to stir in. So that's the only reason I was showing that. And just quick to tell you that pigments you're not going to get transparency out of that, or not very much anyway. And that you'd have to use such a tiny amount. I'm not sure how well it would color it. Feel free to experiment, but if you're looking for really transparent, you might want to look elsewhere. So now I'm going with that whole thought of transparency because I'm trying to redesign stained glass soaps so they don't bleed, because I know you've seen, well, I don't know, you may have seen many tutorials using liquid dye because they're beautiful. You saw the brilliant colors that you get with them, but they will eventually bleed. So right here, I want to show that you can get a transparent color using mica. The key to this, and there's my second spill, maybe my third by now. I don't know, I've lost count. The key to getting a transparent look that still has the color shows fairly brilliantly is to choose a brilliant mica. You don't want to use a pale yellow mica thinking you're going to get much color with the tiny amount that you can add to keep it transparent. I don't know if that makes sense, but I hope it does. Because you really need to use a small amount, which means a more saturated hue, a brilliant, bright colored mica. I wouldn't go too dark. I mean, you can. You're just going to lose some of the transparency with some of the darker colors. And maybe if you want to use a navy, I hadn't even thought about trying that, but I bet the spacewalk would be gorgeous to make a sparkly navy, but you'd have to use such a tiny amount and just be really aware that the more you add, the more transparency you lose. I'm kind of showing you a little bit of a stirring technique for micas. As you saw, the first one, I used alcohol. Used 70% alcohol. I use 99% for some things and 70 for others. But usually for stirring in, I use 70. I did it on the first one, and I had planned to keep doing that, but I got soap that dripped from the spout into my little bowl there, and so I didn't want to put mica and alcohol in hardened soap. So you see what I'm doing here is I spray with, I put a tiny amount. Of course, that's for the technique as well. A small amount. This wouldn't work if you're putting spoonfuls of mica in. It's not going to stir in as well. It can stir in for sure. You'd just be stirring for a long time, creating bubbles, and you may end up with lumps, which I've done before. And if you stir it long enough and possibly reheat it a little, it'll be fine. But when you're using a tiny amount, all you need to do is spritz the top of the soap after you put it in, and then just lightly kind of drag it across the top. What you're doing with that is you're helping it to disperse in the amount in the alcohol that spreads across the top when you spritz it. And if you just kind of, I don't want to say fling again, I keep saying fling, but if you just kind of drag it a little bit across the top, it helps it to disperse more quickly. And if you see, there's really not any lumps left. I think maybe one in this one, but anyway, it does stir in eventually, way more quickly than if you were just dumping it in, not spritzing it, and letting it sink to the bottom or pushing it to the bottom when you stir. If you stir it in too quickly, it'll do that. It just kind of let it float on top. It's neat looking too, but it's really helpful. Stirs it in better than just dumping it in. Okay, so got several colors going on. What you saw me add in that last one was a sparkling mica. I cannot pronounce for the life of me. Maybe if I practiced. There's a name for that type of mica. Almost every company I know that sells micas makes some. They're beautiful. They're beautiful in soap. They're really safe in soap, safe in the bath and in the water. They're not large enough particles to cause problems. They're eco-friendly. And as you see there, you just need a tiny amount. If you add, I love the look of a lot of glitter, trust me. But if you do that, you're going to end up taking away from some of the transparency. Like I'm doing right here. I made a big mistake here. Not a big mistake. I could have done it better. I am very critical of myself. And it's not that these soaps turn out really, really pretty, I think, in my opinion. And I'm not even upset with myself, really. I just know I could have done it better. When I added that Blue Moon mica, another Mad Mica's one, yes, I am an affiliate, and I will have an affiliate link if you wish to order through there. I will get a small commission. At this time, I don't have any coupon codes to share with you. I'm just really new at this, so I don't know what I'm doing. When I get a coupon code, I will share it. But what that beautiful iridescent mica does is add this luminescence that's just stunning. But it also adds adds some opacity, so it takes away from the transparent look a little bit. If I had been thinking ahead, I would have kept the blue separate and then in a separate container put the Blue Moon mica and then kind of swirled it in like you saw me do with the orange soap that we made at the beginning. And it would have been kind of a swirl, which would look really cool in a stained glass soap. I do that later. I do make a little bit of a swirl, which does show up in some of the stained glass soaps. So I'll point it out at the end. You'll see I think it's the last. It's one of the last ones that I pour for colorants, for the stained glass anyway. Okay, so this is not that. Well, yeah, that's actually the last of the traditional types of micas. This next one we're going to do is I leave the soap clear. And I don't know if you noticed, I just keep pouring from the same bucket. That's because I have made a big bucket with the proper amount of fragrance, and I just keep pouring from that. It keeps it warmer. It's easier to heat up when I need to. So this is another one of the sparkling micas. This one is Sparkle Sunshine. I love this mica. I really usually refer to it as glitter because to me it's just glitter. It looks like glitter. It behaves like glitter. It's a little lighter weight than some, so you want to be careful pulling it out. If you're using it frequently, you probably want to wear a mask when you're using it. If you use just a touch, you're going to get this beautiful, beautiful sparkle to it. And if you wait a little bit to pour it, like I did, it was kind of cooling by the time I poured it. It wasn't sticky or anything yet. It wasn't even really super viscous, but it won't sink to the bottom, and it floats a little easier than some micas, no matter what the temperature. But if you pour it hot, it's going to sink to the bottom. So what you're seeing here, this is the fun stuff. I wanted to, I'll say introduced to you, but I know there's other soapers out there that have made videos. That's how I found it in the first place. And then another soap maker in the soap group helped me find the name of it and where it is. I just knew it existed, but I didn't know how to find it. It's so cool. It's not cheap and it's not easy to find. I will leave a link. Zenicolor, that's what it's called, or Zenicolor. I don't know. I don't know the pronunciation, but Zenicolor, Zenicolor. It's really cool colorant. You see how clear this is. I know it looks like toothpaste. I keep thinking that every time I squirt it out. You see how clear this is. This is just as clear, maybe even clearer, because the colors are so brilliant and bright. I don't know. Gives the appearance of being clearer than the liquid dyes. The thing is, this will not bleed. You can put two colors right next to each other in a swirl, in a layer. It's not going to bleed. It won't bleed into other micas. It won't bleed into anything. It just doesn't bleed. It's like I said, it's not cheap. So I've been really stingy with it because I'm really cheap. So you won't see me use it really often, although I do have a couple of soaps in mind coming up that I want to use it for. But I'm tending to be a little more hoardish with these. Hoard-ish. Make sure that came out correctly. I thought this was the one. I do squirt some onto the table accidentally. I may have cut that out of the video, but it was kind of funny. It's not super easy to get out, but once you kind of get the feeling of it, you have to kind of mush them a little bit and mix it a little. It might have separated in shipping a little as you're going. When you first get them, so you just mush them around every once in a while. I do that every time I use them. Since I don't use them very frequently, they sit there, but they're still good. I mean, I've had them for quite a while now. I forget where they come from. I think I ended up finding a source in Canada, distributor, I believe, but I'll leave the link. Anyway, the colors are superb. They're you, depending on how bright you want the color, you have to use more to get the colors. You see me pouring now. I had to use quite a bit, but I wanted the colors to be very bright, and I wanted to kind of show them off a little bit, since some of you may not have seen them before. So you see that sometimes it looks like it's not going to stir in, and then it does. So keep stirring. If for some reason it doesn't, after you give it a, good solid try, pop it in the microwave for just a few seconds. I don't mean the dye by itself in your soap. If it's not stirring in well, just like a few seconds. 5 seconds is probably more than enough. You just want to heat it a tad. As an soap artist, I don't even know words today. I frequently like to use very tiny amounts in heating things up because the temperature is so important. I'm always checking it. I've got to make sure it's right for what I'm doing. So you'll see me do that a lot and like burst it in for 5-10 seconds. I'm not one of these people to just set a timer on their microwave for 30 seconds and do that every single time. I can't do it. I don't want to overheat it. Sometimes you'll see me heat things to temperatures that are a little higher than what you'd think, but I've been hopefully sharing all that with you along the way. I'm just mixing. You can mix any color combination that you want here. I may, if you're interested, do a color blending video where we talk about, how you get different blends. I know some may think it's a little elementary, but if you're a brand new beginner and you haven't done it very often, it can be a little confusing, and you might think you are mixing two colors together to get one, and you get something completely different. Like with some of the reds, if the shade is not correct or the hue is not exactly what you think it is. One of the cool things about this soap, and about this company, the Zenacolor company, and I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I just love it. I love the soap. I mean the colorant. One of the cool things is it comes with a neat little chart and a little card, and it helps you if you want to blend and to get this color. It tells you to use this much, and the card kind of measures it out for you. You squeeze it onto the card. It's like kind of like a credit card, a little plastic card, and you squeeze it onto that, and the length of the little part you squeeze out is your measuring tool, and it'll tell you 2 parts green to 1 part blue or whatever. I kind of go on my own as a fly by the seat of my pants, as I tend to do with a lot of things. But I did use it at first to kind of get a feel for it. I wanted to get a feel for how they blended, and now I just I don't even know if I remember what the little formulas were for the colors. I just kind of go off of instinct. Feel free to do whatever works for you. I did add a little more I did add a little more glitter that I didn't tell you about, and it's a Nurture Soap Mystic Gold, I think is the name of it. I'll leave a link with that, of course. But it's similar to the other kinds of sparkling micas, but it has a little bit of iridescence to it. So the Mystic Gold is iridescent gold. It's white, but it shines a little hint of gold. And they have one that's Mystic Red that has a little pink tint to it, and blue, and I don't know if they have green, but I'll look that up. Okay, so here they come. I'm sorry to pain you through watching me unmold all of these, but I figured there was a lot to talk about with this and wanted to leave myself enough time. I sped through it. I don't do anything that fast. I move pretty slow with things unless it's something where I have to move quickly to get certain embeds in a soap or something like that. So I can move fast on occasion where it suits me. I'm trying right now, what you see me doing there is I'm assessing whether they're solidified. There were a couple in the center that were a little warm, and I didn't want to like shove hard with my fingers and dent them, because you can if they're still a little bit soft. Usually I let them harden thoroughly, but this was a very long day with a very long filming process to get all of this done. And I was tired. I didn't want to wait any longer, so they were taking long to set up because it was just hot. I live in Florida, so it is just plain hot, even in the AC sometimes. So just when I put the bottle behind that, I'm just trying to show you the clarity. As you can see, the ones that are the clearest are the ones with the Color, but you can still see right through the ones with the mica. You can create a transparent soap using mica. You just have to really be disciplined about how much you add, and don't go a little crazy like I did with the Blue Moon or other iridescent sparkles or micas or whatever to get an effect, because you're just going to mess with the clarity. You'll see later in the soaps that you can see through the blue. I just know that you'd be able to see through that one soap better. The dark blue that I made, you'd be able to see through it better if I didn't include the Blue Moon or swirled it in like I said I should have done. Too late. Too little, too late. Kind of in this little segment, and I don't bore you with it too long, I'm just lining up my color palettes. I'm just bringing together the kinds of colors I'm going to use as I go. Everything here is flying by the seat of my pants in the designs. I wanted them to be basically abstract designs, as the last one I did was very specific. Those angels I made took me some time to design on paper and figure out the measurements and get all that the way I wanted. So these I wanted to change it up a little bit and do abstract designs, which took me longer at this part of the process because I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just, oh yeah, the cutter looks, by the way, if you haven't noticed, the wavy cutter can do some really fun things in the stained glass soaps. But anyway, the designs were just kind of coming one at a time as I pieced things together like puzzles. One thing I will say is this mold that I really do like it, but it's new to me. I got it a while back, but hadn't used it yet. It's a brambleberry mold, that white one that you see off to the side where all those big chunks were. All the Color and the transparent mica soaps were being formed. It fooled me a little bit. I thought it was a regular rectangle, but it's really a trapezoidal prism, which means if you know what the shape of a trapezoid is, that's what it is when you look at the end of it. I think I pull one up and show you at one point, but it makes it a little more complicated when you're putting these soaps and shapes in to try to get them to form a pattern and still leave room for the black, because that's how you get, if you haven't seen it before, that's how you get the stained glass look. Oh, you see, there I am. I'm showing it. The top side there was narrower than the bottom. So when you cut a corner piece, it's just not going to match up. It's not going to line up very easily. So it was a little tricky, and you see me fiddling a lot with it. I forwarded through a lot, and I cut a lot out and just faded in and out of, here, watch me make a puzzle. You see how I'm trying to leave space between them? That's because that's where the black which represents the lead. You could probably try them in silver. I haven't done that, but usually stained glass is with a lead that may look silver when it starts, but tarnishes, I'm assuming. I don't know. I haven't seen molten lead. So it's usually a black look for stained glass. So you have to leave edges on the sides of the pieces of soap. You don't want them to touch completely at any place. And I think I do have like one that ends up touching, but for the most part, I was able to keep them apart. You may wonder the outside edge here, why I'm allowing the soap to try to scoot up against the edge. I'm not leaving room for kind of a frame there because I'm about to do that in another mold. I wanted these to be thicker soaps. So I, than what the little pink mold is here. I wanted them to be about that shape, but thicker and a little bit bigger. So that's why I used those, the brambleberry mold, to get the colors to be taller than what they would have been if I used those pink molds, because those are only about 1 inch thick, and I think the brambleberry molds are about 1.5 inches perhaps, which is kind of what I was looking for. So as I'm pouring this, I'm only filling, I'm spilling it everywhere too, as usual. I'm pouring it to the top of that pink mold, and letting the top stick out. I could have shaved that off if I wanted to and had a really pretty soap, but no, I didn't want to. I wanted them thicker. So you'll see in a minute, as soon as I unmold these, I'm kind of just giving you an idea of what the patterns look like on a couple of them, because you can see through them at the moment. The black doesn't scoot much underneath. It does a little bit, but I'm about to put them in a larger mold, as you see here. And I'm being very careful at this point to leave an edge around every bit. So those are not, that's where the frame comes in. This is how you make a framed soap. It might not even be stained glass if you just wanted to have a design and frame it. You make them in a different mold, or you could make them in this and cut them up, I guess. But you leave space around them, and then you pour black, and then you cut that apart. So when you're leaving space, you want to leave a little bit more around the inside edges than the outside. You do have to have space on the outside, but a little more on the inside, because when you cut these, you're cutting the frame for two soaps. So you cut like right down the middle between the two soaps, and you want to have enough of the leaded look or the framed look to cut, and so they both have like enough frame. I don't know if that made any sense. Hopefully. So when I was spritzing the bottom of the mold or in there, because it helps them to slide around. If you didn't know that trick, it helps soap move, like you'll see me doing here while I'm pouring the hot soap. And I do pour this black pretty hot, not hot enough to melt anything, because again, you're not again from this video, but from a past video, I was telling you, if you have larger embeds, it cools the soap pretty quickly, and that the heat will help it all adhere together. So I didn't melt any embeds at all, but I poured this about 133, I think is my usual. I might have been a little higher with this one. But as I'm spritzing, it's helping that soap to flow in between the cracks and crevices. Anytime you're wanting soap to move and flow, it will cool it at the same time, but it will also help it to move. I use that little trick and tip in very fine embeds. If I'm pouring into a little spider mold or something like that, you spritz it with alcohol when you right after you pour, and it helps the soap to move into the smaller parts of the embeds. I'll do, of course, someday an embed video too, and show you that so you can watch and see what I'm talking about. But it's a cool effect that the alcohol has. I use it for many things. Several of you had asked why I spritz it after they're set up, and that's usually just to help show off the clarity. The camera doesn't always pick up the clarity of melt and pour soap. And when you're using a melt and pour soap, you're using it in water, obviously. I mean, I would hope so. So that it becomes very crystal clear when you do that. And so I just want to kind of give people an idea of what it looks like when they're using it, and even in person, and just when you first open it or in the wrap, it's going to be more clear than it is in the camera. Now, as you see, when I unmolded this, looks like it's just a hot mess, doesn't it? Pretty, and I'm not saying that just to like put myself down or something. It's a hot mess, but that's intentional, because the hot mess will be cleaned up. Like I said, I want to get in every crack and crevice. I didn't want any bubbles, and I didn't want any spots missed. So I went ahead and basically covered all of my beautiful designs in black soap. But don't worry, we get rid of that pretty quickly. And, well, I shouldn't say pretty quickly. Some of them we get rid of pretty quickly. And others take a little bit of extra effort, which I was happy to do, because I think the result is worth it. If you haven't learned by now, if you know anything about me, I really like intricate designs, and I like the harder stuff. Call me sick, but I like soaps that take a little bit more work, rather than just pour a color or two and be done with it. I like a challenge. I like to keep learning and learning new techniques, and hopefully I can share all of those with you as I do. This part was a little harder. I thought, okay, well, they're a little thicker than my regular soaps, so I'm going to use my Uncle Andy's to shave a little bit off of the side that I poured the black over. And it did work for the most part. It didn't get everything, and there's some that's going to slip under. So I did end up coming back and you'll see a little bit on here. I come back with a knife like this and shave off the bits of black that are still there. Please don't get the impression that I'm that good with a knife, that I can move that fast. Again, this is really sped up. I'm moving very slowly, actually. But I'm scraping some off. I'm slicing some off. Just depends on the soap and where it is on the soap. After the video I do is done, I clean them up a lot more. Just because I wanted to give you a basic impression of what they're going to look like. That one I think I got pretty much everything. But and that one was my favorite, by the way, pretty much my favorite. I like the ones with those block looks. They look like bricks or clear glass bricks or glass blocks. I love those glass block walls. Oh, my favorite. So these are the designs. I do show you each one. Hope that doesn't bore you too much, but I just wanted you to see what the designs were, since you really didn't get to see them as I was making my skips through here and there. The reveal part of this is fun. At least it was fun for me to see what they look like, because I wasn't sure which ones were going to come out. That was another of my favorites. I love the little triangles. They're really, if you play around with the shapes, they're really not hard to create nice designs. You just have to be patient with yourself and willing to change things out. If you don't like this color, cut a piece that's similar from another color. If you don't like the combo, if something doesn't fit just the way you want it, it's okay to shave a little bit off and see if it fits. To me, that was kind of the fun of it. I like puzzles, though, so there's that. I see it leaves a little bit of marks when you're doing it with a knife, but you can kind of polish those off. I don't have a good soap planer. If I did, I would have used it on these, but I don't. So I ended up just scraping it off, and it did work really well. But someday I'll have a soap planer and be able to do that. I didn't want to keep changing the size on the Uncle Andy's and taking more off that way, because I have it fine tuned sort of to my loaf soaps, and I like to leave it that way. I know there's you can measure it and bring it back, but it's just, I don't know. I don't like to mess with it too much for changing the sizes. I do every once in a while, and then I'm usually mad at myself because it takes me so long to get it just back to the way I want it. As you see, I cut my soaps typically a little bit thicker than many people. They're usually around 1.5 inches. It's actually, I forget what the actual measurement is. It's a little shy of that or a little above that. I forget which. It's marked somewhere on my measuring tape, because that's the way I double check everything. I do like to measure some things. You'll see me, like I said, I tend to fly by the seat of my pants, but I do eyeball a lot of things once I get the feeling of it and what it should be. As I was measuring to pour those demonstration soaps with each color, I wasn't measuring. I was kind of eyeballing it, and I really, for me, I thought I did a pretty good job. I only over poured one and under poured one, and it was easy to fix, of course. So there's my two favorites. I'm going to bring them up, or two of my favorites. I'll bring them up and show you close. Hopefully you can see the sparkle in that, because it does shine through. You can see where the blue is a little bit, that darker blue is a little bit more translucent than transparent, but it still lets light through. If you have not seen any of my videos before, I appreciate you taking the time to stop by. If you have, thanks for sticking with me. If you got this far, it's fantastic. Please like and subscribe, and you'll find a lot of beginner, intermediate, and advanced tutorials coming up soon. My channel's very new, and so just getting going. So I hope you try these. I think they turned out beautiful, but more importantly, they're never going to bleed. The colors are as they are now, and they will stay that way. Thanks for stopping by. I hope I can help you to become a better soap maker. Thank you so much. Bye. Hey everyone. Today we're going to be talking about fragrance oils, and on the screen you're going to see a demo of a second set of resin soaps, resin design soaps, and occasionally I will reference something that's going on the screen if I catch it, hopefully. And the rest is going to be me talking and a small little slideshow of some information for the fragrance oils. So you're going to see a couple of bottles, second set of bottles come up right there on the screen. Notice that one is really clear and one is yellowed. The clear one, well, first of all, they're the same fragrance from the same company. And the clear one is the older fragrance, and the yellow is the newer one. So there's a few reasons that this can happen. One is that the manufacturer may have changed their formula, but more likely because it is a sample, it probably sat around for a bit, or they just took less precautions than with the larger bottles of them, thinking they're going to just be used up quickly and sent out quickly. They probably have bigger turnover with sample fragrance oils because they run specials a lot on their samples, which makes it easy to try. But yeah, so I guess the whole point I'm saying is you want to make sure your fragrance oils aren't sitting in the sun. Some kind of protected place would be ideal. So in a minute, you're also going to see me just referencing the pipette, and all I'm pointing out there is that sometimes we grab a pipette and we're just, squeezing stuff in. And I basically don't use the pipette for measuring with this with a soap for fragrance oil, because I'm usually using a weight. I put it on the scale. I use the pipette to deliver the amount I want, but I'm using the weight on the scale to judge that. I ended up using the pipette for measurement this time because my scale kind of shut off in the middle of what I was doing. So I didn't have the reference of what was in there. And that can happen too when your battery is getting low. So it's time for me to get new batteries. So let's talk about fragrance. We have, we go in the U.S. and many other countries. We follow standards set in place by an organization called the International Fragrance Association. If you've heard people talking about IFRA, that's what they mean. IFRA is the acronym they use for that. So how do you know what IFRA says is okay to use? How do you know how much to put in? And how much do you know your soap base can hold? And so you're looking at skin safety, which is what IFRA determines, and you're also looking at what is logical for whatever product you're putting it in. Right now we're looking at soap, but I will reference a couple of other products that some of us might make because there is a difference. And yes, unfortunately, or fortunately for the consumer, you have to look at each individual fragrance because of the different constituents of each fragrance, the chemical makeup basically. They're going to be different, and skin is going to react to it differently. If you have a fragrance oil with cinnamon oil in it, or cinnamon, resin, or any type of molecule that has cinnamon in it, a lot of people are allergic to that, and you might find some really bad skin irritation. So if you notice, most of the IFRA standards for a fragrance oil with cinnamon are pretty low for a reason. And so that's one of the reasons you really can't go over what they recommend. You can go under, and we'll talk a lot more about that later. You want to go under it in many cases, because sometimes their maximums that they give are not necessarily maximums that make sense for what you're doing and what you're creating. So where do you find fragrances that are compliant with IFRA standards and provide the information that you need? I highly recommend looking for professional soap suppliers, professional fragrance oil companies that provide fragrance oil for bath and body products. Any of those professional companies are going to have the information that you need. It may take a little finding it, but they should have it. If they don't have it, that's a problem, and most likely a company you do not want to purchase from, because they are either skirting laws or they're just not providing the information they're legally obligated to provide, which may mean their products contain things you don't want. There's a bunch. I'll list some in my description, but I'd like to say more what to avoid. I would not purchase my fragrance oils from Amazon, and I wouldn't purchase them from eBay, and I would not purchase them from your general craft stores or other types of hobby stores, etc. You may find some that have good quality, but so I'm not going to say never, ever, ever. Look at the material, look at where it comes from, and talk to the people who either own the store or perhaps, just one of the people who can help you find the information. If they can't help you find it, and if there's no website on the bottle where you can readily look it up and find it just while you're on your phone right there at the store, I would leave it there and go find it somewhere else. There aren't that many fragrances that are so wonderful and marvelous that you cannot find another company that makes something similar. Yes, it is going to cost you more in shipping, and but in the long run, it'll cost you less if you find a fragrance you really love and want to buy more of it. You're going to be buying in larger quantities and then paying less because of that. The other way it's going to cost you less is you're not going to end up with some kind of lawsuit or somebody suing you over an allergic reaction. So that's just my take on it and what I believe in how I create my soaps. I really kind of go overboard on being cautious with that. I have very sensitive skin, and so I have to make sure for my own safety that I don't use subpar products. So in a few minutes, I'm going to be bringing up some information, like a little mini slideshow. It's just going to show some information that you can find easily on the websites and how to find it. Some of these are just screenshots, and I've marked on some of them, and I have to spout out the information quickly because I didn't really give myself enough time. That's my own fault, but I think you can get the gist of it. Of course, you can always rewind and look more carefully at what I've posted on there. You can always ask me questions in the comments. If I leave something out or don't get to something, please ask me. I prefer it to be in the comments on the video. It's more helpful for me to find it rather than in a soap group which I don't mind you commenting on those, but it's just easier if you're asking a question. I'm definitely going to see it quicker if it's on a video because I get notifications for those. So I'm just kind of giving myself that out because I'm sure I'm going to leave something out. There's a lot to say. Percentages, we'll talk about that in a minute, but the only reason I'm bringing that up is because you see me adding activated charcoal dispersed in glycerin. And when we start talking about percentages of things you can add to your soaps, additives will be another video coming down the road. I'm really not looking forward to doing that one. It's a little scary, controversial, etc. So hopefully I can do it some justice and still give you some basic guidelines. And then we're going to do a couple of other videos that are going to open up hopefully some discussion on additives and what you can or cannot add and why. And so anyway, with additives, it's not just what you can add or not add, it's how much. And part of that is when you go over a certain percentage of things you're adding to your soap, you get to a point where it's no longer soap. You have to adhere to whatever the manufacturer of your soap says you can add for the most part. you you may find some wiggle room with some things, but you want it to still be soap. So here you just see the additional information that's just directly under the product when you click on an individual product. The flash point is when it's the degrees that it's too high for you to add your fragrance oil. So you have to add it under that, and most of them are pretty high, so you have a good amount of wiggle room there. Soap is typically put at 5%. That's high. It's really high. And if you notice, body lotion is up at close to 10%. Pet spray at almost 16%. That's too much. So and here, right here, they certify the product is in compliance with IFRA. Maximum use for skin exposure level is the amount of fragrance that your skin can tolerate, not the amount that will work for your product or your base product. You might want to rewind that one and look a little more carefully. Some of these are just showing you things you might find that help you find the information. I'm circling that one because number 9 is important. Soap is always under number 9. The categories are numbered in any information coming from IFRA. But here, look at this. Baby products and products for your eyes are the maximum is 15%. That's too much. I wouldn't want to put a product with 15% fragrance oil near my eyes or on my face even. That kind of sensitive skin and sensitive area, it's just ridiculous that that's the recommendation, but it is. So that's why you don't go with the maximum. That's what they are legally allowed to say, is that maximum, according to their testing, that maximum is safe. It's not safe for me. So the maximum is your legal guideline, but common sense is going to be a better guideline. So some things you have to take into consideration. If you're adding 10% of a fragrance oil to a lotion recipe or even a lotion base that's pre-made, it's not going to remain a lotion. It's going to really throw off the balance of the emulsifier. So you don't want to add that much. You want to look at what your base product allows. And even then, and we'll talk about that a little later because I do have another couple of little screenshots that show some other information about that and where you find it. But speaking of where you find information, don't get lazy when it comes to research. I'm not trying to call anyone lazy, but I know as newer soap makers, you get so excited to make soap. It's an addiction. It's a very exciting time when you discover, for most people, I believe, that really love making melt and pour soap. It's so much fun. And overall, it can be pretty easy. But there's so much information and misinformation out there that you really do want to do your research. And that's the part you don't want to get lazy at. You want to Google. Don't just ask everybody. Yeah, you can ask in the soap groups, etc. But remember, not everyone on there is an expert, and there are different opinions, and there are different people who use different soap bases and use different products. So you can't know that they know what you're using, etc. So your research is the best way to handle things. And when I say research, I mean like not just one source. Look at multiple sources. Look at multiple people's points of view so you can make your best decision. Definitely look up examples of when you add too much of something or the wrong thing to soap. And when you see some physical representations of what can happen, I think it might help you understand that not everything that is said to be safe is. We'll do more of that in the additives video. I'm kind of digressing here. But the fragrance oil I used in this, I kind of fooled myself. And that's the reason I'm bringing up the diligence with research, is I researched this fragrance poorly. I got the fragrance because I was looking for a black raspberry vanilla that didn't contain vanillin or vanilla constituents in the fragrance because I didn't want it to turn brown or even slightly tan or yellow. I wanted super clarity. So I found one and I misread. I looked at the information, but I was in such a hurry that I misread something. I was taken aback by the way they talk about their fragrance oil. They say skin safe, and then it says no. And then it says yes in parentheses. You'll see it in a second. It's going to pop up. It says yes in parentheses if you use it under 3.5%, which basically just means that it has a lower IFRA percentage. But they make it a policy within their company that anything that is below 5% is not going to be listed under their skin safe fragrance oils. So that's Aztec, and I mean I'm fine with them doing whatever they need to do for their company, but it tricked me a little bit because I wasn't sure it was safe, and then I saw that it was, but the whole process of finding that made me miss an important fact for me. I like to use fragrances that are phthalate free, and I glanced at where it said phthalate free, no. And in my head, I saw that as phthalates. No, it didn't have phthalates, but it does. And as you see listed right here, I pointed to it. Boy, that went by quickly. It does have phthalates. And so I'm using something that I don't like to use. Well, it was too late by the time I made this soap. It's at a low enough rate that it is considered skin safe by IFRA, and I used it way below 3.5%. I typically use 1% and occasionally have doubled that to go to 2% if it's allowed within what the IFRA standards are. Which those are kind of in the middle of changing right now. I believe in 2023 they were starting some tightening up of the regulations, and so you're going to have to watch for that. I know the companies have a while to comply with that, and I don't know what that date is, but that's something to look into and research for yourself, because I haven't found a clear, concise collection of the information yet. If anyone else has, please note that in the comments, because I'd love to know exactly what is changing and when does it have to change by for what I'm purchasing. And the only information I've been able to find is somebody charging for a class on it. And I'm sorry, I don't have money for that. And I feel like that's something that's too important to gatekeep like that. I mean, that kind of information shouldn't be gatekept. And it probably isn't. It's probably somewhere very clearly marked that I'm just missing. So anyway, but I know we have time, so I didn't do that for this video. But I recommend you looking on your own to see any changes that are upcoming. There is an IFRA website, and you might be able to find it there. They are definitely giving lots of information about how their association runs and how they do their testing, etc., which is kind of cool. So if you want to look through that website and see what's there, you can just Google IFRA, and it's going to be somewhere on that first page of search results. So let's see, what am I leaving out? Basically, I'm not going to tell you what fragrances to choose because that's highly subjective. Everybody senses fragrances in a different way, and so I can't tell you what's good, what's bad. You have to let your nose do that, which is why I recommend buying samples, one of the reasons. Also, you can do your own testing as to what discolors and what works well in your soap bases, because I may not use the same soap base as you. Everybody has their own preferences for that as well. So within fragrances, what I recommend when you're doing sampling is I would sample a few different companies if you can, even if you have to spread that out over a few months. Don't forget that if you're new, you want to really research and practice and test, etc., for 6 months to a year before you begin selling products. So spread that out, try different companies, Don't purchase a larger amount of fragrance oil unless you've tested it and unless you know that it works for what you want it to work for and that you really love it. And even then, don't jump in whole hog. You probably won't use as much as you think you will. The fragrance oil for this soap that you see me making here on screen, the previous one was the black raspberry vanilla. This one is from Makesy, which the reason I'm bringing this company into it is not a lot of people, well, a lot of candle makers know of it. I don't know if a lot of soap makers do. They are very expensive oils, which turns some people completely off when they see the prices. But please keep in mind, they are incredibly strong, at least most of them. There might be a few that are a little lighter. I think one that I noticed was lighter was the sheer vanilla and orchid or something like that. But most of the ones I've used are so strong that I even go under 1% for those. But they last really well in the soap. So when your soap is set up, I mean, Melt and Pour is known for retaining fragrance better than cold processed soap. But this one to me performs better than a lot. Some of the higher end fragrance oils, or even some of the just regular old soap supplier fragrance oils, you may have to stir longer than you think to get them stirred in. I purchase from such a variety because not any one company has all of the fragrances I like. So I get a few from Wholesale Supplies Plus. I get a few from Aztec, some from Fragrance Buddy, which is kind of on the lower end of pricing if you're looking for a bargain, as is Aztec when you're purchasing samples. They have a real good deal for samples most of the time running. And I purchased some from Wellington. I purchased some from, oh goodness, my brain shut down. So I'll have to put the rest of what I use and some other recommended ones that I know are good because I know other soapers swear by their fragrances. And so I'm going to list them. They're known for quality products. So even if I haven't tried them, I trust that they're at least a quality product. Whether or not it's a good fragrance oil, again, is subjective because what you like, I might not like. So for me, a good rule of thumb, and I actually got this one from Anna at Koala Soaps. She recommends, she does about 5 milliliters, measuring from that because that is equal to about 1% for most fragrance oils. They do vary, and the larger batches that you make, the more important it is to weigh to weigh the fragrance oil into it. Because if you're off by just a little bit and then you multiply that by a large number, now you're going way over. So I always underestimate, for one thing, especially if I'm not measuring on my scale, which I usually am. But it's 0.1%. It's 0.16 ounces, which is approximately, it's actually a little bit more than 5 milliliters. It's or a teaspoon. So I will round down to 0.15 frequently. So if I'm doubling that, I end up with 0.3, which is still under really that 2%. Okay, so I'm back to this. I'm just showing IFRA data sheet. This is Makesy's website. If you click on that, it's going to take you to the data sheet. But below this, it gives their recommendations. Their suggested level is 3 to 6%. But they do say to check the IFRA for the safe level. They show this here is their IFRA certificate listing. It is 4.1, which is quite a bit still, and much less than 6%, which was their part of their recommendation. Okay, real quick here, the questions and answers here. I found this in the questions and answers on Wholesale Supplies Plus. Their base can hold up to 6% additives, but they note to be very careful because oils are going to reduce lather. Stevenson's has use up to 2% additives. And while I I do like some of their bases. I'm definitely a wholesale Supplies Plus person. The Crafter's Choice bases are my favorite, but I do occasionally use Stevenson's for some things. And they work really well for some people. With the kind of soaps I make, it's not quite as user-friendly for art soaps. But 2% is their top, and I usually don't go above 2%. Now, when I'm adding, you see the activated charcoal I just added. I mentioned that because I add that in glycerin. It's in glycerin, and I add about a teaspoon of that, sometimes a little bit more. But that together with my fragrance needs to be under 6%. Oils, adding oils, including fragrance oil, it is going to deplete the lather in any soap base. Too much will cut the lather. So you do want to experiment. If you want to experiment, you can experiment, but don't experiment with too much fragrance oil. That's something you do not want to mess with, to potentially cause somebody harm. So this Makesy oil fragrance, I kind of got off track here again, but this Makesy fragrance oil is called Salt Air and Honeydew, I think. It's definitely the one that has salt in it. Salt in the fragrance tide. It starts with that. And then honeydew. They have several different salt types, and I love them all. They are so fresh and clean. This one reminds me a little bit of coconut lime verbena, but it's saltier in a good way. It's a great fragrance. And like I said, it is so strong. I used less than 1%, and I did these soaps a while back, and they still smell amazing. I know I said fragrance oil is subjective, but I'm just saying that their products are a very high quality, and I'd give them a try. So if you have any questions about anything I've said, or if you notice something glaring that I left out, because I would not be surprised, what I wanted to point out real quick here as I'm cutting these is look at this soap now rather than in the end pictures, because the end pictures for this one didn't come out very well. I have a difficult time getting the raindrop soaps to capture the depth and the 3D quality of the raindrops. Whereas here you can kind of see it already, and that's at a farther away distance, and haven't spritzed it or anything like that. You can see clearly it looks like a water droplet. But in the photos I took, it didn't do it. The crushed velvet soaps, it captures beautifully. So I'm really not sure what I'm doing wrong with lighting or with my camera, or well, my phone. It's my camera phone. So something's not happening right with a few of my soaps, and I have to kind of figure out how to adjust that. But in the meantime, I just wanted you to have a peek at these while they're close up and see. I will be beveling these in just a second as well, so you'll get a chance to see them, and then I'll spritz them. And you can see clearly those raindrops. These are fun. If you have not seen it, I do have another video with the raindrop and not chiffon, crushed velvet techniques in these other colors that you're seeing in the background there, the green and brown and the blue, pink, and kind of a gold color. Which is this right here is what I was going for the first time with colors. I wanted it to be more like water, and the first one I did had a pink shift to it that I didn't realize would show up quite so pink or purple-ish. So that's one of the reasons I redid this. The other is I just was dying to do these in other colors. They're fun to make. They're really not that difficult. You just have to pay attention to, as usual, your temperature as you're pouring. And I go more in detail with that in my first video. I will link that at the end, and I'm also going to link the beginner's series, the beginner's melt and pour series at the end of this video. And if you are a beginner, I highly recommend you look through those. I'm not finished with it yet, so not all of the information is there. As I said, I'm kind of been putting off the additives because that's a little bit of a scary one. I'm actually probably going to break that one into about 3 videos. I'm going to start with what you can add to your soap. So as a beginner, I recommend with the that you start with the easiest things to do, the easiest things to add, the easiest way to learn about fragrance oils. Again, getting samples, trying different companies, and same with the soap base. You want to try a few different companies before you are married to one kind and never want to use another, just because you're not sure what the others can do. I used a base I didn't really care for, but I didn't know it until I tried to do some more complicated designs. And then I got frustrated seeing other people do neat designs that I could not do because of the way the soap base behaved. Again, it's nothing wrong with the soap base. It just doesn't work for what I did. So you see me comparing the first and second designs there. The green is the first one for this one, and there's the two new ones together. Let me know in the comments which ones you like better. Here's my awful picture of the raindrops. I really hope that you've learned something today. I hope I helped in some way. And let me know if you need more information or if you need to know where to find something. Do read the description, because there will be a lot of information in there as well. I really appreciate you taking the time to drop by, and I hope I can help you to become a better soap maker. Thank you so much, and have a great day. Bye-bye. Hey everyone, let's make some heart soaps. So you'll have to use whatever amount of coloring and fragrance you're comfortable using. I would definitely check with the fragrance percentage that you're supposed to use, the IFRA guidelines, usually available on the website where you purchased your fragrance oil from. But again, this is not a very beginner tutorial, so I'm just assuming you know all this. This next soap here is the same thing with a different color, and what I'm going to point out here is that my basic technique is I fill the cavity a little more than halfway, and then I add my crystals. You could vary that as much as you want. You could add, I wouldn't add less than half, because you're going to end up not having enough soap to encompass all of your crystals. But I add about, I don't know, I add as many crystals as I feel like I want. Then I usually add a little bit more soap over top of that, making sure they're all in the soap. All of the crystals are covered with the soap. Temperature, pouring temperature, I do it a little bit above the melting point, which is different for every base. So that is something you'll have to play with on your own, or research on the website where you purchased your soap, or store or instructions that come with your soap base. As you see, I skipped ahead a little there. That wasn't intentional. So we just didn't get those amethyst soaps on film. This is the same technique though. This is a little bit more difficult. All I'm doing is a 3-color. So I aim to get the first color, which in the purple was also white, but with a different fragrance. And then I keep them separated just by taking that little stick and holding them back. Then I put a medium pink in this case, because these are supposed to represent rose quartz. The medium pink is a little bit more like rose gold, but that's the way I do my rose quartz soaps. And then I'm going to come in, you'll see, and put the darker pink at the top. It's just like I did with the purple. I started with white, and then a medium purple, and then a darker, more bluish purple at the top. The purple ones, the amethysts, are fragranced with French lavender essential oil. And the rose quartz is baby rose from Brambleberry, I think. And here you see me filling over the top. You do not want to wait long before you fill in over the top, because it sets up quickly, which is why I take it to above the melting point. If you do it at or below the melting point, you're going to find that it sets up too quickly when you're adding a lot of crystals. If you're just putting a few embeds in, then you're going to, they'll start melting. So this one here is just a quick little calamine clay soap. I added too much calamine. Again, I'm used to doing these in larger batches, and just in a hurry doing too many at once. I usually do a whole batch of one type of soap and then a whole batch of another type of soap, and didn't quite get the clay stirred in as good as I should have. With the rose clay, which you see me doing here, I don't think it matters. It's there's because the speckles that it creates on the front, I like the look of it, and it's just clay, so it's not going to hurt you like if you are not properly stirring in your fragrance oil. That can harm your skin, but the clay isn't. It's just clay, and skin safe clay at that. So the calamine lotion, the calamine clay, if you're using that, I would make sure it's stirred in really well and not to use too much, because it just doesn't set up properly. I'm pouring over my little leftovers into a side cavity. I always have something set up there, and been using that in my bath because I liked it. And again, I think that one was a rose fragrance as well. Yeah, the calamine was French lavender. Okay, so what you're going to see now is some crystals. Those are just scraps. I make larger crystal soaps that are hand cut crystal shapes, and I just cut the little points off. I cut little facets in them, and I save them all because they can be used again, like this. You could start with just a fragranced or not fragranced piece of soap that you have colored the way you want it for the crystals, and chop that up, which I do as well. And someday I'll do a tutorial on that, how I do my larger batches of polished rock soaps. But this, I'm sprinkling on some environmentally friendly glitter. It's actually, this is not glitter now that I'm thinking of it. It's a type of mica, and I'm not going to try to pronounce it because I can't. So it's, I believe this one is sparkle gold. I'll leave it in the description, but it's a type of mica that's synthetic and has just the same effect as glitter, but it won't harm the environment. And I spritz with alcohol first and after. And I just sprinkle on how much I want and get the look I like. I like for at least the edges to be covered because it really highlights the shape of the crystals. When I'm cutting my crystals, a little tip on making them actually look like crystals and not just chopped up soap is I angle the knife a little bit. So I'll angle it. I won't cut straight down. Like when you're cutting a bar of soap, you want to cut straight down so you get a nice straight bar. Well, with the crystals, whether I'm going from a bar of soap or whether I'm going from scraps like this, I angle the knife a little in various ways. I just keep changing the angle a bit and tilt the knife down toward the table a little bit and then the other direction, and you'll find it gives a more realistic crystal look. And I'm doing several little batches of these because I just wanted to show the heart soap ideas I'm making. These scraps you see right here are from the carnelian crystal soaps I made. If you are in the soap group I'm in, or any of the many soap groups I'm in, you may have seen this one. I think it turned out beautiful, but I wanted to use the scraps. So those I'm going to sprinkle with a gold. Those are the gold. That's right. So that's the Sparkle Me Gold, or I know that's the wrong name. I'll put it in the link. I'll put a link and the name in the description. Back to the clear ones. The clear soaps are from my my quartz crystal soaps that I make. So those don't have any color in them. They do have fragrance. They're peppermint essential oil in those. And then I added lavender essential oil as well to the soap base that I'm using, that I embed them in, because I wanted it to be kind of a cool peppermint lavender fragrance. essential oils don't always work well or last well in soap, but I find that lavender does, and the peppermint, not as much when you're using it on its own, but if you're using it with something else, it does tend to keep a little bit of that fragrance around. So see there how I'm kind of twisting the knife and angling it. I don't know if I showed it well enough. I can't talk and even watch the video at the same time. So you see why I'm not soaping and talking at the same time, because it just doesn't work. My brain doesn't work that way. So that one is going to be for a carnelian heart soap that's a little bit different in, I just wanted to play with it. Wanted to use up the scraps that I had for my carnelian crystal soaps. Colors. Oh, yeah, I'll put it in the description because I'm a mess at telling you what they are. Again, I didn't feel like the facets had enough glitter. I just wanted to show off the shape of the crystal. You'll see in a little bit, I pull some white crystals like I used in the amethyst and the rose quartz soap, and I put them next to the quartz crystals. And you'll see why when I put it together, but I just wanted to mention that that those were pre-made. Those were the same ones I pre-made for the amethyst soap. And they have white mica in them, so they're colored and then glittered on the outside. And here we have some shaved soaps. These are pre-made by me earlier for a soap I frequently make, usually using a wine soap. This was not. I'm just kind of playing with the shreds that I have. There are a couple of different colors in there that I'll link. But I wanted to show also how I make them. It's so easy. It looks terrible on this table I'm on because it's not very stable. See, there it goes. Wiggle, wiggle. That's fun. This is the soap I'm shaving up. Is a planet. It's a planet left over from a galaxy video I made, but it has not been edited yet, but you'll see it eventually, I'm sure. The shredder I'm using is a little bigger than most. It's a veggie shredder. I don't know the exact name, but I don't even think it's available. It was a Pampered Chef item and they don't carry it anymore. It just gives larger shreds. So if you want to create the same look, find a cheese grater that has not been used for cheese and use the largest setting on it, or what's the other thing? Salad shooter. Some people use those. But the larger the grate, the bigger, obviously, the bigger shreds you're going to get. And as you see, when I used a small piece to create the shreds, it curls up a little bit, so it gives it a different look. The longer pieces give a more wispy look. It looks like, look to me a little bit more like grass or confetti. And then the curly ones, I don't know what they look like. They look like curls of soap. And I think they look pretty. They do look a little bit different in the soap. So there is, I mean, it's not a huge difference in the look, but you'll see it in the soap. It shows up, to me, it shows up more before you put it in the soap. So I think you could use either one and be fine. The top set of shavings I had already pre-glittered. So that's why you didn't see me stirring any glitter on those. They were already done. This one I think in both of those I'm using one of the synthetic micas that has a little bit of red tint to it when the light hits it. You cannot see it on the camera, but I'll link them in the description. They're really pretty, those kind of inference type colors. Oh, and there I'm scooting the shreds onto the tablecloth. That's fun. It is a clean tablecloth, at least. Yeah, I'm a messy soaper. I admit it right now. These are simple soaps to make, and if you would like me to do some that are more from the very beginning of, let's melt our soap, let's mix our color in, let's learn how to take the temperature, and how do we calculate our fragrance oil, all that stuff, I can. I absolutely can and will, if you want to see it. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to make some more beginner-friendly like very, very beginner friendly, because these are so easy. Videos. Wow, I broke that up very strangely. Um, Happy to make beginner friendly videos, but these are just more ideas. These are you've been playing around with melt and soap for a while and you know what you're doing, and now here's some cool things to do with it. Um, this one, oh goodness, I'm not even going to try to remember the fragrance. But these are easier to me because these aren't the 3-color ones are more difficult. Um, oh, I'm doing the hardest one first here though. Am I? No, I'm doing I don't remember what I did. Isn't that terrible? I'm doing the carnelian first. So, nope, I'm doing the shreds first. Someday I'll write down what I did so you don't have to hear me stammering around. So, these shreds are the ones I usually use in my strawberry wine soap. And I did use a strawberry wine fragrance with this, or a fragrance combination that smells like strawberry wine. But the soap is just crystal clear soap. Normally I use an actual wine soap for those, but again, I was just playing around. So, and then I use my little handy dandy stick, which were ridiculously cheap on Amazon, and they last, and I got a little tired of trying to use things that needed to be thrown away. I don't like to waste when I don't have to. So, and just like the crystal soaps, I add the soap first, then I add the shreds, and then I add a little bit more soap. If you're only using a few shreds, you want to make sure you're pouring at a temperature that isn't going to melt the shreds, because they're more easily melted than the crystals, because they're thinner and smaller. But I like a lot of them. So if you cram a lot of shreds into that soap, it's going to cool it immediately, and then it's going to be a little more difficult to get that top layer to, or really it's the bottom layer when you're looking at it from when the soap is finished. It's going to make that more difficult to adhere if the soap is starting to cool by the time you pour that last bit over it. And if you, with a soap like this that just has one bunch of shreds you're putting in, it's very fast. You don't need to place them specifically. You just grab a handful and shove it in, which cools the soap very quickly. Okay, so this is the next one that I was playing with. This is scraps from the planet I made. So it's from one soap, but it has 2 colors because it was a swirl that I did in the planet. So it looks like it's 2 different. The other one are actually 2 different soaps, or I mean, sorry, 2 different colors, and I just mixed them together afterward. It looks the same to me for the most part. So I think you could do it whatever way you want. You could use a soap that didn't sell, or if you sell soap, or a soap that you made that you didn't really like the way it turned out. Is a great way to use up scraps or soaps that didn't work, because you should never have to throw away. I shouldn't say never. You should rarely have to throw away any soap. The only reason would be as if something got in it that might, like if you put an additive that you didn't know would melt it, like lavender buds. Melt it, would ruin it, would mold. Because lavender buds, as many of us know, will turn into mouse poop looking things and rot in your soap, which isn't great. So this next one here I'm pouring is using flowers that normally won't mold, but I'm gonna put a little caveat there. Some people have had issues with using cornflowers. I'm using blue cornflowers, and mine so far have held up just fine. But I've heard some stories that they also can mold in soap or rot in soap. So kind of an experiment for myself. I use the cornflower for other things, so I didn't just buy it for soap. But I wanted to see for myself how well they held up, and so far so good. And I did this video a while back because I take way too long to edit and record voiceovers. And with adding flowers, usually calendula is the one that we know won't, or at least I know for me what I've used, and I've had some sitting around. I had one I made myself, and it sat around for 2 years before I used it, and it looked great, crystal clear, and certainly didn't irritate my skin. So I'm going to go under the assumption that those do not rot. And since every other soap maker who uses melt and pour and has used it says that's the safe one, I'll go with that. This one was just an experiment, and like I said, so far so good. I think the difference is if you're buying corn flour that is not really corn flour, cornflower petals. I believe some of them sell petals that look like corn flour and call them corn flour, and they're really not, and so they begin to rot. I skipped ahead because we lost the footage for the carnelian. I forgot about that. It's the same as the other crystal soaps, heart crystal soaps I made that were one color. I just poured a little more than half and shoved the crystals in and poured a little more on top. If you are, oh, well, I was going to say, if you're less messy than me, then you won't have to trim the edges. I did really good with the carnelian, but the rest of them I kind of over poured a little bit. I got messy. This one here is the cornflowers, and I just used a little bit of yellow liquid dye, a kind of an amber yellow color, because I'm using Amber Romance and I wanted it to look like amber a little bit. And oh yeah, the last one I'm doing is a little bit more difficult, but still easy. It's honestly just having something to hold the crystals a little bit in place till it doesn't have to set up. The soap isn't going to set up on you. But if you push them to one side for just a minute, just a hot minute, they're going to stick to the side you want them to stick to. So this one is just clear soap, no color. There's a little glitter in there, but I think that's just because I have glitter all over my house, and probably the stick that I had sitting there was in the glitter. So it wasn't intentional, but it never hurts. And this is a quartz style crystal. And so there at the bottom, you see now I'm picking up those white crystals that do have white mica in them, and the glitter around the outside stirred on it. And so that's what I'm getting a little picky with it. I'm a bit of a perfectionist sometimes, even though I'm messy. And so I'm trying to get all those separated from the others. And then there go the clear ones. And then I use my stick to bring everything to one side, because my goal was to have the top look like just super clear crystal, quartz crystal. And the bottom a little bit more like it has some inclusions. As quartz crystal will sometimes have white, sometimes have inclusions of other stones, other minerals. So I'm just kind of pulling it there because I want that top to be clear, which is a little harder than the 3 color ones I do, because nothing's going to hold them back except pulling. But they stayed. You'll see in the picture in the end, it really did stay clear at the very top, and it was a really cool effect having the clear ones in there in the middle layer. Well, middle layer, it's not really a layer, but the clear crystal quartz crystals that I made, because they just have that little bit of glitter just picks up the edges of them, and you can still see the clarity. And I think it looked really cool. I was really happy with the way that one came out. And here I am still shoving one more crystal in there because I am a perfectionist and can't leave well enough alone. One point I didn't say earlier is I'm spritzing all of these with rubbing alcohol to pop the bubbles, because we don't like that. We don't need bubbles, or at least I don't need bubbles. I don't know about you. Oh, okay. We're coming to the end here. This is the results. I pulled them out. I didn't mean to pull those out without filming, but I did. So this is what you get. From me, things are always going to be a little hectic or a little wonky, but that's just who I am. And there's the carnelian. These are the puffy hearts, the ones you first saw me pour. I don't know if the camera picks it up as nice as it looks in person, but I think they came out beautiful. I was really happy with them. You see me spritzing these with alcohol after I pull them out for the camera. Part of that is when I go to take my pictures for my customers, or for just showing off my soaps. I like for people to see what they look like when you're using them, because the first minute you put a clear glycerin soap in water, it's like glass. It's clear, clear, clear. And to me, it just shows it off at its best. And it really helps the light pick up the glitter so that you see the crystal shapes and whatever else you've got glitter on, which I guess for me is everything. So here are the shredded ones, and you'll see, I don't know if you can see against my black gloves that are way too big. There's a rim around the edge at the back, and that's again because I'm a messy soaper and can't stop when I'm pouring adequately, so it gets a little out there. Later I take a knife and trim that off if I need to. If it's a soap that is square, rectangle, or something an easier shape, I'll usually use vegetable peeler to get that off, but on the round ones I find that harder. I'm a little bit uncoordinated when it comes to that, so I use a knife and just very carefully trim the edges, going slowly so I don't cut myself. Here's the carnelian that you didn't see me pour. Oh, it came out so pretty. I love it. I did a few more. They're gone. But yeah, look at that. Look at the glitter. It sort of picks it up. The camera looks like it's picking up a lot of it. I'm still learning on how to get the right angle, on not getting my head under the camera, all kinds of things, how to talk while I'm watching my soap video. So please bear with me. If you want to see some more tutorials, I definitely have some more complicated ones coming up. I like to make complicated, technically difficult soaps because I find it to be a challenge, and I like to make soap art. These were kind of I make a lot of these because I do sell a lot of the polished rock soaps, and I'm just in love with making crystal soaps, and they are some of my easier soaps that I make. So just thought I'd share those with you, but I can do some more difficult ones. I can do some easier ones. Let me know what you'd like to see in the comments, and if you like anything that I'm doing or are interested to see hopefully how I progress, maybe get a little bit better, like and subscribe. Right now I only have this one video, but hopefully soon there'll be some other ones to follow. That's the cornflower, and it came out so beautiful. It's just stunning. The pictures of it are just gorgeous. I think I loved it. So hopefully the flowers will still hold up because it looks gorgeous. And yeah, this one did too. I love this one. This is the calendula, calendula petals in Amber Romance fragrance soap. You'll see a tiny bit of glitter got in there because I apparently can't avoid putting glitter in just about everything. That's not totally true. If I really am picky about it, I won't let glitter from one batch get into another. I don't typically do this many different soaps at once. So, oh, and here we have the results. I'm going to let these play through and let you enjoy, or maybe hopefully enjoy what the soaps turned out like in my Lightbox pictures. Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope you learned something or at least enjoyed it. Like and subscribe, and I really hope to see you later. Thanks. Bye. Hey everyone. We're going to do a Coke bottle glass soap today, and it's a fairly simple design. I would consider it a beginner loaf soap. Doesn't get much more beginner than this other than a one color soap, or maybe a layered single layer or two layer or something, 3-layer. It's pretty simple. So I'm letting the text up on the screen right now guide you. It tells you everything you need to know. Hopefully, if I leave anything out, you know where to find me. But I want to take a second and thank everyone who checked in with me and checked in with us to see if we were okay during Hurricane Idalia. Your thoughts, your prayers, your well wishes were so appreciated. And we are also sending out good wishes for those who had worse damage than we did, as we were just fine. Other areas in our county were flooded, but we skirted past that. We were able to just have the anxiety of a possible hurricane hitting us. It didn't hit us directly. So, but hopefully everybody is gonna who doesn't have power will get it back soon, and hoping that you can have any damages repaired soon, and everybody's feeling okay as soon as possible. So thanks again. Now let me see if I can catch up with what's being said here and see if there's anything I need to add, because I think it's silly to just read it all. I'm not going to do that. I try not to anyway. But sometimes it helps because it reminds me what's coming up and what might be another side talking point that I wasn't able to put in the text, because it's a lot sometimes. Even the easy soaps. For me, I like to be very thorough with my directions or instructions, and it can be very easy to try to want to say everything, and you can't do that with the text. It's too much. Or I can't. You might be able to, but so I'll try to see what I may have left out, or some, anticipate maybe some questions you have. The one thing that I did not mention up in the text is the type of glitter I'm using. I did say sort of the idea glittering mica is sometimes what it's called. This one was, oh goodness, it's not, it's from Nurture Soap. Super Sparkles. There, I knew I'd think of it if I gave myself a second. It's Super Sparkles, and the reason I use that one, I use a lot of the glittering micas from Mad Micas, but I have a couple from Nurture Soap because the particle size is a little bigger. So I like to have options like that, just like I'm giving myself options here in the soap with sizes. When I'm doing, this isn't really a crystal soap, but it is very similar to a lot of my crystal soap designs. So what I do in those as well is give myself size options of different crystals that might be forming in the rock, etc. This is supposed to more look like perhaps shattered glass, but the whole idea is to replicate the color of Coke bottle glass. I absolutely love that color. It's about my favorite. I have a couple of pieces of glass art with that color in it, just little small ones, but it's one of my things that I really like. And this is the reason I'm doing it with this specific soap. Is this soap gave me the idea a couple years back. I bought a sample size, the 2-pound size of the aloe vera and olive soap from Wholesale Supplies Plus. And like they say on the website, the color of the soap base varies a little bit, and it varies according to that particular crop of the aloe vera or supply that they get at the time, and it naturally just varies in color a little bit. So the first time I got it, it was a little closer to this color. It wasn't quite as bright of a green, but it was very much looking like a Coke bottle glass. And I was like, ooh, that'd make a really cool soap, and thought one day I'll do that. And sure enough, I did. I bought this, bought a larger block of this specifically because I wanted to try to make something that looked like Coke bottle glass. And I kind of went with the shattered look because it's more of a way to indicate that it's glass rather than a rock or stone. But honestly, you could get away with giving somebody a bar of this and saying, hey, don't you like this aquamarine soap? Or, something else that's similar, because it's very similar to crystal. Anyway, it is a type of crystalline material. So there you see the base. And, well, it's a little more orange. It looks a little more orange while that stirrer is sitting in it. Keep that in mind, because it really doesn't have the orange twinge, but it is quite yellow. Look how clear it is, though. You see, that's pretty remarkable for a soap that comes kind of off color, for it to hold such clarity. I think they say this is Wholesale Supplies Plus. I think I mentioned that. states, I think, on their website that it's a 9 out of 10. They rate their soaps clarity from 1 to 10. And I think they say it's a 9 out of 10. And I think the only thing closer, well, let me think about this. The only thing closer to a 10 other than the crystal clear is 10 out of 10. So that's how they're kind of gauging it. That's their clearest ones, as clear as you can get. And I can pretty much testify to that. It's really super clear. The extra clear, I can't remember, but it might be a 9.5 out of 10. I'm not sure. But then this one's a 9 out of 10, which is higher than I think any of the other clear bases. And it really, I mean, the clarity is fabulous. It does have a tinge of color, but you can still see right through it. So it, to me, looks like glass. Looks like colored glass. And you see me adding little tiny dabs. I'm being very cautious about the way I add my liquid soap dye because it's so easy to accidentally get too much. Sometimes those drops can come out either really big or just 2 drops will come out instead of 1. It's very difficult. So I'd rather put it on something else that I can pull away from the soap if I need to before it drips into it. So that's why you see me putting it on a little stick or the stir thingy, spatula, stir thingy. That's a technical term, by the way. Another thing I wanted to mention while we were talking here about this soap base. Now, oh, phooey. I totally forgot it. It just left my brain. This is what my brain is like this week. So again, I'm just putting in these crystals, but I can tell you that my technique, the way I like to work it so that I have the best control, is I start with the littler ones and I leave a little bit. You notice I didn't cram it full. Leave a little I leave a little wiggle room so I can sneak those larger ones in there. And the reason I do that is because if you start with the large ones, they're just going to fall over. The smaller ones and the medium ones give them a little bit of stability to help hold them up. As you are layering anything like that or adding a large amount of embeds, it is going to very quickly cool your soap, the liquid soap that is in there. That's why I'm moving fast, and that's why I'm pouring this remainder of the soap at 127. Now, for this soap, I believe the melting point is 125. You want to be a little bit above. I might have gone above that if I had, I think anywhere near that can work. I wouldn't maybe take it up as high as 130. That might start melting some of your pieces a little bit. But you want them to be very secure in a soap that has this many embeds. And I do promise you that it does very quickly set up when you're not quick enough to take it out immediately. Just so you know, this is edited. This is edited, and I, every pause, etc., and slightly sped up. The you do want to. One of the things about getting a soap out easily is making sure that it's fully set up. I think I said that in the last video, but this one was a little tricky because I could have just shoved right at the top really hard and gotten it out quickly. But I was really cautious because I didn't want it to land on those top crystals that I ended up cutting off. I wasn't sure whether I wanted stuff sticking up or not. I think had I maybe made a little more of the tall crystals and had more sticking out, it might have looked cool. But with just a few, it kind of, I don't know, bothered me. It wasn't enough. It's like all or nothing. And with the other thing is if you just have 1 or 2, it's more complicated to wrap. If you have a whole bumpy top with, lots of little things poking up, it's actually a little bit easier because one that is sticking up particularly high is just, it's going to poke right through. I have done it before, and you can do it, and it is possible. And if you're careful with it and how you ship it, it's fine. I just didn't want to mess with it this time. So I was like, nah, I'm just going to cut them off. It didn't add that much to me. Of course, you can do whatever you want because it does look cool and it does look like a big shard of glass sticking up. But I also wanted to bevel them too. And it's really difficult to bevel if you have them sticking up like that. They get in the way. Let's see. Uncle Andy's, that's the cutter for melt and pour. I will stand by that until I no longer stand by that. But I haven't seen any cutter come close to being as good as far as giving you even bars. I have many times you might have seen me use the double-handled cheese knife, those large kind of chef's cheese knives that for cutting cheese are very sharp, and they do a great job of cutting, but they don't do anything for helping keep your lines straight. I mean, that's all up to you, and I'm not that great at it, so I use it when I have to, when I have soaps that will not fit in the loaf cutter, but pretty much, yeah, Uncle Andy's does great with loaves, so that's what I'm saying. I don't think, and I'm not good enough to just use the cheese knife for most things. It takes a lot more time and care and measuring and saying a few prayers and doing a little rain dance or something for me to use that and come out with it looking straight. But Uncle Andy's is just a breeze. So there's my Uncle Andy's rant for the week. These I think they came out really cool. They definitely got some really interesting responses on my page. People seemed very interested in them. But I think I'm hoping that you see what I see when in watching me make this. It really isn't a hard soap to make. It wasn't hard at all. A couple little not decoration, but little design points. On this one, I wouldn't add too much glitter. Some of my crystal soaps I'll add a little bit more depending on the look I'm going for. And sometimes I add a variety of glitters, but I just wanted this to look more like shards of glass. So I left it at the one kind of a whitish glitter. It isn't really a true glitter, just so you know. That's why I put in there soap friendly. I'll leave a link, of course, in the description box. Hopefully you can find that. If you can't, let me know. I'll try to either walk you through it or put a link in the comments or something if you can't find it. But I think that look makes it looks a little bit more shattered. That's why I like the bigger, little bigger pieces. Bigger, what's the word? Larger particle size. That's it. I know I said that earlier, but I'm re-emphasizing it because I was talking about the design. And like I said, pretty much you could take this idea here. This isn't new. And you could do with it pretty much anything you wanted to. You can change the colors. You could, just make it your own design. You could put the whole thing full of crystals if you wanted to. But looking like glass, this is the way to go. Adding, a little bit of liquid dye to balance out the yellow that's there. You're going to have to kind of see what yours looks like if you order this particular base and see it might look different than mine, so you might have to adjust a little differently. That's why I tried not to give very specific measurements of those. I said 1 to 2 drops. I mean, you might need 3. I don't know, because yours might be way more yellow than mine. That's part of learning to be an artist, is look and see what you like. It's a lot of people, soapers and others, get really bogged down by, how do I do that? I want to do that exactly like yours. I want it just like, and you got to learn to, well, you don't have to, but it's really good to learn to trust your own instincts. What do you like? When you're looking at it, that's the nice thing with it. While it's in the bucket, you can see the color it's going to be. It's not going to change when it sets up. In most melt and pour soaps, you get what you see. Cold process soapers have a little bit of a struggle because what theirs will color more often than ours. We will have color morphing if you're not careful what fragrance oil you choose. Anything with vanillin is very likely to turn yellow or brown over time. May not happen right away, and sometimes it actually does happen right away too. But over time, that vanillin is going to discolor. And there are a couple other types of ingredients in fragrances that can discolor or cloud the soap a little bit. So use with caution, test all your fragrances. And for a soap like this, that I know I want super clear because I want it to look like glass, I use a tried and true one I know is clear. Now, was talking and bragging about the clarity of this soap base earlier, and I just want to say that, yeah, you can see right through it, and you can see the edges of the crystals, which is why when I put the glitter on, I was really more focusing on the edges, the outlines of those crystals, more than covering the whole thing with glitter. It helps keep the clarity, but it really helps you see where they are. But it's probably not going to have the same kind of clarity if you're making, let's say, a picture soap of some kind, like a landscape or a mermaid or something. Although it might look kind of cool with a mermaid. I don't know. But just keep in mind it might be a little bit different if you're trying to see a picture through it. Just test. You could take, if you get the base, melt it, create yourself a bar with the fragrance, just a single bar, see how it looks. Put it in front of whatever you're thinking of trying it on. You can always, because you've just done it, and you probably don't need to do it about 8 times. If it's successful, you can cut it up and melt it in the rest of the soap that you're planning to make, and then put the embed in. There's many ways to test soaps and figure out and learn what works for you. Like I mentioned with the temperatures, everybody likes a different type of soap base. I really do want something that is easy to melt and doesn't set up quickly on me. And I'm not paid by Wholesale Supplies Plus. I just prefer their soaps for that reason. They're more open time, and the clarity is beyond. I have not found anything quite as clear. But the melting point, again, for me is important. But if you choose to use another base, just learn the melting point of your base. And not everyone by the same company is going to be the same melting point. You have to learn them or mark them. Look it up. Most of the websites will tell you that information. And you usually have to take it a little bit beyond the melting point as far as getting the temperature before it's all melted, but not much. And then it cools. Keep in mind it cools a little as you add colorants and fragrance and stir that in. Okay. I hope you enjoyed this and got something from it. I'm rambling a little more than usual today, but if you have any questions, please put it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope that you have a great day. Thanks. Bye.